Star Wars is a space opera story with a deep philosophical subtext which is prevalent in all of George Lucas's writing, as well as in the writings of the authors who worked with him. Star Wars is a story where a demonstration of fight for freedom against tyranny is incredibly well mixed with philosophical implications about the universe, life, about the creation and destruction, and, above all, about our place in this world. What happens if you leave one of these crucial elements that make up Star Wars off? The product no longer has the same atmosphere and feeling of grandeur and magic, hence becoming something else, but not Star Wars. There is a certain formula that involves specific aspects in order to create an entertaining yet deep story set within the Star Wars universe, and George Lucas, as well as other writers who worked with him during the time prior to the acquisition of Disney, knew how to make such things work. If you want to get the true Star Wars experience, then you must explore this fictional universe in this particular chronological order. The Beginning of Time, Knights of the Old Republic 1, Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Revan Book, Star Wars The Old Republic, until the retaking of Korriban, Deceived, Star Wars The Old Republic, until the Cold War, Fatal Alliance, Annihilation, Star Wars The Old Republic, until the death of the Emperor Tenebrae, Darth Bane Trilogy, Jedi Apprentice Novels, Darth Plagueis, Star Wars Episode 1, Star Wars Episode 2, The Clone Wars Movie, The Clone Wars Seasons 1 through 3, Republic Commando, The Clone Wars Seasons 4 through 6, The Clone Wars Legacy, Labyrinth of Evil. Instead of the CGI Clone Wars and Labyrinth of Evil, Tartakovsky's Clone Wars can be watched, with the Republic Commando fitting in between the two parts of the 2D Clone Wars. Star Wars Episode 3, The Force Unleashed, Star Wars Episode 4, Star Wars Episode 5, and Star Wars Episode 6. In this video we're going to be covering all the major events and important characters of the Beginning of Time, Knights of the Old Republic 1, Knights of the Old Republic 2, The Revan Book, Deceived, and Star Wars The Old Republic. I will not be including the events that transpire in the Fatal Alliance and the Annihilation books, because they are side stories that are not mandatory to know in order to understand the full picture of the main events of the story. The Fatal Alliance takes place in the year 3643 BBY, which means before the Battle of Yavin, and the Battle of Yavin happened in the 4th episode of Star Wars A New Hope. The Fatal Alliance book tells the story about Jedi Master Satele Shan's apprentice, Shigar Kanshi, who is tasked with investigating an auction held by the Hutts, in which both the Republic and the Empire are interested. In the end, in order to save the galaxy, the Padawan is to unite with her enemies, the Sith. Annihilation book is set in the year 3640 before the Battle of Yavin, and it tells about Satele Shan's son named Theron, and how he, paired with a smuggler and a Jedi Master, destroys Sith's super battle cruiser, the Ascendant Spear. The book, called Deceived, focuses on the taking of Coruscant right before the peace treaty between the Republic and the Sith Empire. As this event has galaxy-wide consequences, I will be including the story told on its pages in this video. This video tells the story of the Old Republic, probably the most interesting and multifaceted period of time in the Star Wars universe. Without further ado, let's get started. First, let's set the chronology. Knights of the Old Republic 1, or KOTOR, takes place in 3955 BBY, which is 40 years after the Exar War. Knights of the Old Republic 2, KOTOR 2, takes place 4 years after KOTOR 1, so 3951 BBY. And then the events of the Great Galactic War, which is featured in the Star Wars The Old Republic trailers, takes place in 3681 BBY, so 274 years after KOTOR 1 and 270 years after KOTOR 2. Lastly, Star Wars The Old Republic, swtor, begins 38 years after the return of the reconstituted Sith Empire to known space, but the actual game starts 10 years after the signing of the Treaty of Coruscant. An important note before we begin: The Sith in KOTOR and KOTOR 2 were renegade Jedi and Republic soldiers who had followed Revan to the dark side. The true Sith, the Sith Empire, had been forced into hiding on worlds like Dromund Kaas, closer to the unknown regions, millennia ago. They include the Emperor Vitiate, who turned the Jedi Malak and Revan into Sith when they found him after winning the Mandalore War. The beginning of time. A cruel and scientifically advanced species known as the Rakata, in 30,000 BBY, established a major galactic power by wielding the Force to drive its machinery. The Rakatan Infinite Empire conquered worlds across the galaxy through its superior technology, but when a plague ravages its population, sparking a massive and violent slave revolt against the weakened empire, the Rakata's devastating rule finally comes to an end. A gathering of scholars and philosophers on the planet Typhon eventually results in the birth of the Order of Jedi. However, despite their study of the balanced Force, fearsome conflicts known as the Force Wars erupt. A tremendous Force cataclysm devastates their planet, forcing members of the reformed Jedi Order to find sanctuary elsewhere. They soon flourish on the distant world of Ossus. Having freed themselves from the shackles of the Infinite Empire, the core worlds rebuild and unite to form the Galactic Republic. The signing of the Galactic Constitution on Coruscant swiftly follows, before reverse engineering of the Rakatan hyperdrive technology allows the Republic to further explore and rapidly expand. Finally, Jedi meet with the newly established government to pledge their support as defenders of the galaxy. Over the course of the next 3,000 years, the Republic managed to maintain peace and prosperity, all while exploring and charting the expansion region. Unfortunately, the Great Manifest period comes to a bitter end when the planet O-Sakan challenges Coruscant for the right to be capital of the galaxy. An entire 10,000 years following the outbreak of the O-Sakan conflicts, the Jedi Order gradually splinters as more and more of its members begin to practice the dark side of the Force. Exiled for twisting life itself and creating horrific mutations with their newfound powers, the Dark Jedi manufacture a monstrous army with hopes of revenge. This sparks the onset of the 100-year darkness. After a century of the grueling conflict that banished Dark Jedi, survivors discovered the world of Korriban and its ancient inhabitants, the Sith. These powerful, Force-sensitive yet pliable species worship that new overlords and even serve them as willing slaves. The Dark Jedi forge a new Sith civilization by interbreeding with the mighty natives, thus sowing the seeds of the Sith Empire. Becoming more attuned to the dark side of the Force, the Dark Jedi called themselves the Sith and formed the Sith Empire. After the Sith Empire was formed, the man named Tenebrae is born in the year 5113 BBY. Tenebrae would later become a pivotal figure in the galactic history, known as Darth Vitiate. Tenebrae was a son of Lord Dramath and of a poor farmer's wife with whom Dramath had a relationship. Upon learning of Tenebrae's existence, Dramath ordered his mother to drown her newborn, but his mistress secretly defied him. Years passed, and when Tenebrae's stepfather, having figured out the truth of his wife's affair with Dramath, when Tenebrae manifested Force sensitivity, attempted to attack his wife, Tenebrae snapped his stepfather's neck. The young Sith then tortured his mother before eventually killing her. Dramath utterly ignored Tenebrae until his son was the age of 10, when he carved a path of destruction across the planet Medrias, massacring thousands. Dramath then confronted Tenebrae to decide whether he should execute or enslave the boy. But Dramath discovered to his horror that Tenebrae had already surpassed him in power. Tenebrae killed Dramath, severing his father's power and imprisoning his spirit for millennia of torment. Eventually, the Dark Lord of the Sith, Marka Ragnos, recognized Tenebrae's power and christened him as the Lord Vitiate, the new ruler of Medrias. Vitiate renamed his homeland Medrias to Nathema and ruled it for the next century, distancing himself from Sith power struggles. There was a member of the Sith Council under the reign of Dark Lord of the Sith Marka Ragnos named Naga Sadao. a powerful Sith Lord alchemist and a master of illusions. Naga Sadow preached an expansionist philosophy that put him at odds with much of the isolated Sith Empire's establishment. Sadow was considered a major candidate for Dark Lord after Ragnos' death, leading him into a power struggle with conservative rival Ludo Krish that only ended with a surprise arrival of two explorers from the far-off Republic. Sadow saw opportunity in the two explorers, siblings Gav and Jory Daragon, and used the suspicion and fear raised by their arrival to foment war with the Republic. Along the way, Sadow shattered Kresh's forces at Khardelba, leaving no challengers to his authority. With Kresh seemingly out of the picture, Sadow gathered together all the Sith Lords and built a formidable military force to conquer the Republic, while also taking Gav Daragon as his Sith apprentice. When the time was right, Sadow and his forces launched a massive surprise attack on the Republic, a many-pronged strike aimed at conquering the important Koros system while seizing the Republic capital of Coruscant. For his part, Sadow stayed isolated in his Sith meditation sphere, augmenting his forces with illusory beasts and ships. The Sith tricked the Republic into thinking he had a massive amount of ships. Sadow's effort initially met with great success, and he was on the cusp of victory when events turned against him. Gav Daragon turned coat once back home and attacked Sadow in his meditation sphere, breaking his concentration and dissipating his illusions. His momentum halted. Sadow killed Daragon and fled home, only to find a still alive Ludo Kresh waiting for him with his own army. Sadow managed to deal his rival a final defeat before immediately being forced into battle against with a pursuing Republic force. Seeing he could not win, Sadow escaped with a daring run through the twin stars of the Dinari Nova and made his way to the uninhabited moon of Yavin 4. Sadow practiced his alchemy alone there for decades, building massive temple complexes, before voluntarily placing himself in suspended animation. Following the Sith's defeat in the Great Hyperspace War and the run of Naga Sadow, Vitiate lured the remaining Sith Lords to Nathema and, in an elaborate ritual, drained their life essence and that of the entire planet, increasing his powers and prolonging his life. By doing this, Vitiate rendered the planet devoid of the Force, making himself effectively immortal. Shedding his identity as Vitiate, the self-proclaimed Sith Emperor led the scattered Sith survivors to Dromund Kaas and established a new Sith Empire. The Empire secretly expanded over the next thousands of years. The Emperor desired absolute immortality to experience the pleasures of life and expand his new creation across galaxies, so he plotted to initiate a war between his Sith Empire and the Galactic Republic. The deaths caused by the conflict would fuel a new ritual that would allow him to consume almost everything in the galaxy and become an all-powerful god. Interlude. Naga Sadow was awoken some 600 years later by a fallen Jedi named Freedom Nad, who learned the former Dark Lord of the Sith secrets before killing him. After that, Freedom Nad proclaimed himself Dark Lord of the Sith and used his sorcerer's powers to subjugate the world of Onderon, where he ruled as king from the capital of Izis for more than 100 years until his physical demise. His body was entombed below the royal palace of Izis, which became a focal point of Sith power. Nadad's spirits lingered in the tomb, from whence it taught the descendants of his bloodline and further steeped Onderon in the miasma that was the dark side of the Force. Later, Exar Kun, a Jedi Knight curious about the Sith, led the temple to find out as much as he could about the Jedi's ancient enemy. He went to the planet Onderon, which had once been ruled by Freedom Nad. With the help of a pair of Nad's followers, Exar Kun came across Nad's tomb on Onderon's moon, and there was confronted with the spirit of the dead Sith himself. Seeing in Kun a potential avenue to regain a physical form, Nad directed the young Jedi to the ancient Sith homeworld of Korriban. There, Nad conspired to grievously injure Kun, only healing the man when he accepted the dark side into his heart. Kun's next stop was the moon Yavin 4, a place with its own Sith history. Kun enslaved the primitive Masasi living there and compelled them to build extensive temple complexes across the forested world. Soon afterward, the fully corrupted Kun banished Nad's spirit, having never trusted the old Sith, and in the process learned of several other nascent dark side users who had learned from Nad. In the process of learning about the Sith, Exar Kun succumbed to the dark side himself and proclaimed himself the Dark Lord of the Sith, striving to bring forth a new golden age. Allied with a secret aristocratic society named Krath, other fallen Jedi, and the Mandalorian warrior clans, Kun and his newfound apprentice, Cal Droma, who was initially on an undercover mission to destroy Exar Kun, commenced a bloody war against the Republic starting in 3996 BBY. With their allies, Exar Kun and Ulic Qel-Droma launched a series of deadly campaigns against the Republic, eventually making their way to the heart of the galaxy, Coruscant. Following this battle, Kun and Qel-Droma launched an assault on Ossus in an attempt to raid the planet of its Jedi artifacts. However, the Battle of Ossus saw the defeat of the Sith forces, the capture of Ulic Qel-Droma, and the retreat of Kun to his base on Yavin 4. Broken and humbled, Qel-Droma agreed to lead the combined forces of the Republic, Rim Fleet, and the Jedi to Yavin 4, in an effort to defeat Exar Kun. Under the combined strength and efforts of the Jedi, Kun was defeated, and the Great Sith War brought to an end. Interlude over. As the true Sith Emperor's plans neared completion, he orchestrated the Mandalorian Wars as a preliminary invasion of the Republic. The Mandalore War started, Mandalorians attacked the Republic, but the Jedi Council didn't want to interfere and help the Republic, fearing an escalation. A group of Jedi disobeys the order and goes to the front lines. This group includes Revan, a vocal and charismatic critic of the Order's inactivity in the ongoing Mandalorian Wars. Revan was also the leader of the Revanchist movement. Once the war started, the Jedi Knight donned the mask of a fallen Mandalorian and drew his violet-bladed lightsaber, adopting the name of Revan. He vowed to wear the mask until all of the Mandalorians were brought to justice for their atrocities. Revan then joined the Republic military's fight and was appointed Supreme Commander. The man who would later be called as Revan was born in approximately 3994 BBY, and some believe that he had been born in the Outer Rim territories. The child who would be remembered as Revan was eventually discovered to be Force-sensitive and was accepted into the Jedi Order. The Jedi Master Kreia claimed to have been his first teacher in the ways of the Force. Regardless of the truth of her statement, Revan was trained along with a fellow student named Alec, both on the planet Coruscant and at the Jedi Enclave on the planet Dantooine. Both humans received further training from the Twi'lek master Zhar Lestine, who noted that the man later known as Revan possessed what he described as an insatiable desire for knowledge. Lastin believed that it was simply youthful exuberance and eagerness, and he expected the young man to become a champion of the Order, a sentiment shared by Master Vandar Tokare, though Master Rook Lamar was wary of students' desire for knowledge. The Jedi Revan and Alec studied under a number of Jedi Masters. Jedi, later known as Revan, had undertaken a thorough study of the Force bonds and other uncommon Force powers during his time as a Padawan. Alongside Alec, the man achieved the rank of Jedi Knight sometime before the year 3964 BBY, and the two were widely acknowledged as being among the most promising members of the Jedi Order. However, Alec's friend was commonly recognized as the more powerful and intelligent of the pair, and he was seen as the leader among the two. By 3964 BBY, the man was a well-known, charismatic, and powerful Jedi Knight. Those who were against the Jedi Council's pacifist decision in regard to the Mandalorian War included Revan. Beside him, there were his friends Malak, his Padawan Mitra Surik, and others, but not Bastila Shan. Bastila Shan was a Jedi who had an exceptional gift with a Force power known as Battle Meditation, which increased her allies' morale while demoralizing their enemies. Shan sided with the Jedi Council when the Jedi Knights Revan and his close friend Malak rebelled against the Council and joined the Galactic Republic in its war against the invading Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders. In an effort to draw out the Mandalorians, Revan launched a campaign against the planet Althir III that destroyed much of the Mandalorian army. By 3960 BBY, Revan had ordered the construction of a superweapon known as the Mass Shadow Generator, which had been designed by the Zabrak engineer Bao-Dur. The Mass Shadow Generator serves as the centerpiece of an elaborate trap in the Malachor system, where he hoped to lure the Mandalorians into a final confrontation that would end the conflict. He placed his Padawan, General Mitra Surik, in command of half of the Republic fleet to serve as bait to draw the Mandalorians into the range of the Mass Shadow Generator, while the rest of the fleet under Revan would launch an assault on Mandalore's flagship. However, Revan himself was delayed outside the system by a Mandalorian scouting party. When he finally arrived in the Malachor system, a massive naval battle was underway. And Mandalore the Ultimate, the leader of Mandalorians, realizing that defeat was inevitable, decided to challenge Revan to single combat. Accepting Mandalore's challenge, Revan engaged the warrior in a duel to the death aboard Mandalore's flagship. Despite Mandalore's strength, he was eventually overcome by his Jedi opponent, and at the end of the duel, Mandalore lay dying at Revan's feet. Coughing up blood, Mandalore removed his mask and began to speak to his victorious opponent about how he had been betrayed. Puzzled, Revan questioned Mandalore as to what he meant, and the dying man explained that he had been manipulated by a red-skinned Sith into beginning the war. The Sith had convinced Mandalore to help him uncover a Sith tomb on the ice world of Rekiad before he influenced the warrior into attacking the Republic, and Mandalore gave Revan Rekiad's coordinates in order to prove he was telling the truth just before he died. Revan took Mandalore's mask, his symbol of leadership, as his spoils of war. With Revan's victory in the duel, the Republic forces began to press the Mandalorian forces closer and closer to Malachor V. It was then that Mitra Surik commanded Bao-Dur to activate the Mass Shadow Generator, and Revan's own vessel was outside of range of the superweapon as it activated. Revan and Surik both watched in horror as most of the Mandalorian fleet and a large number of Republic vessels were drawn toward the planet into a massive gravity vortex. Countless ships were pulled from orbit and slammed into Malachor V's crust, crushing them and fracturing the planet to its very core. Thousands died on both sides of the battle, though the Mandalorians suffered far more casualties than the Republic. In the wake of the devastation, the Mandalorians who survived transmitted their unconditional surrender to the Republic forces. In the weeks that followed, Revan ordered that the remaining Mandalorians be stripped of their weapons and armor, and that they dismantle their Basilisk's war droids. Knowing that they would only resume the fight if a new leader took Mandalore the Ultimate's place, Revan refused to return the mask to Mandalorians, and many of the warriors soon became bounty hunters or mercenaries. Shortly after the Battle of Malachor V, Revan completed the construction of a new assassin droid named HK-47, which he based on the Draka Corporation's HK-24 series assassin droid. Not wanting to repeat the devastation that occurred at Malachor, Revan decided to use HK-47 in order to assassinate selective opponents. When analyzing Revan's actions during the Mandalorian Wars, and particularly at Malachor, HK-47 came to believe that Revan may have had an ulterior motive. The droid believed that the devastation was meant to break the Jedi and make them loyal to Revan alone. The assassin droid HK-47 will later be employed against high-ranking political targets in hopes of achieving goals without the kind of devastation that occurred at Malachor V. Revan programmed HK-47 to be loyal and obedient to him, but the droid considered all other life forms to be meatbags and possessed a significant liking for violence and combat. After hearing HK-47 refer to Malak as a meatbag, Revan programmed the droid to refer to all organics as meatbags. After Malachor, Mitra Surik was left bereft of a connection to the Force, and she decided to answer the Jedi Council's demands for Revan, Malak, and her to answer for her for their actions. However, Revan and Malak refused and took the remainder of their forces into the unknown regions, claiming to be pursuing the remaining Mandalorians. Malak urged Revan to kill Surik, but Revan refused, claiming that the Jedi was already dead. The former Jedi Mitra Surik remembered how she watched silently from the bridge of her command ship as the generator crushed both the Republic and the Mandalorian forces caught in its destructive wake during the Battle of Malachor V. She was torn apart from the inside. The ensuing death and destruction, particularly that of the comrades she had led and befriended during the war, caused her such a substantial wound in the Force that the shock would have killed Zurich had she not unconsciously and instinctively severed her own connection. Thereafter, she was deafened to the Force call, incapable of sensing it through the interference caused by the Force echoes of the suffering that she had inflicted and been forced to witness. The only Jedi under Revan able to turn away from the dark side after Malachor V, she was also the only Jedi to willingly return to the Jedi Temple on the galactic capital Coruscant and face trial for her actions, and also to defend them. Revan, along with other Jedi and Republic soldiers who fought alongside him in the Mandalorian War, except for Mitra Surik, go to the unknown regions to investigate the Sith influence that had caused Mandalore to go to war. Two of the Mandalorian war heroes, Revan and Malak, meet with the Sith Emperor, also named Darth Vitiate, on the planet Dromund Kaas. He turns them into Sith. Many of the soldiers and Jedi who followed Revan and Alec, who changed his name to Malak, joined the new Dark Lords of the Sith. However, Revan and Malak broke free of the Sith's Emperor's influence, and after discovering the star maps leading to the location of the ancient Dark Space Station, they found the Starforge in the Lehon or Rakata Prime system, and decided to use the Starforge to create their own Sith Empire and destroy the Republic. Starforge being a giant automated shipyard designed to create the most powerful army of all time. It was constructed by the Rakatan Infinite Empire in 3000 BBY, 5000 years before the rise of the Galactic Republic. The Starforge drew energy and matter from a nearby star which, when combined with the power of the Force, was capable of creating an endless supply of ships, droids, and other war material. Revan became the master and Malak his apprentice. After a year of preparation and secrecy, Revan and Malak formed their own Sith Empire and invaded the Republic in a subsequent conflict known as the Jedi Civil War. At some point during the war, Malak openly viewed his master as being soft, causing tension between the two that culminated in a lightsaber duel. Malak's jaw was removed by a lightsaber strike from Revan, and Malak was forced to wear a large metal prosthesis cover over where his jaw had once been. A vocabulator allowed Malak to talk, but his voice now reverberated with a gruff electric tone. A short time later, in 3957 BBY, the Jedi Council set a trap for the Sith leaders, sending a small fleet to the Outer Rim as bait. The Sith attacked the fleet, but a small Jedi strike team led by the Jedi Knight Bastila Shan, who was capable of battle meditation, a Force ability that strengthened one's allies and weakened enemies through the Force, attacked Revan's flagship. Revan dispatched several Jedi and Republic soldiers when they attacked him on the command deck of his vessel, but Shan and 3 other Jedi arrived to confront the Sith Lord before he could leave the bridge. Malak, on his own vessel nearby, sensed that Revan was in danger and decided to take advantage of the situation to take his master's place. Just as Revan prepared to duel Shan and the other Jedi, Malak's vessel opened fire upon the bridge of Revan's ship. Amid the confusion, Shan rushed forward and delivered a force push to the Sith Lord's chest, sending him flying. Revan was critically injured in the explosions and the fighting that followed. The only survivor of her strike team, Bastila saved Revan's life with a Force and took him to safety, forming a powerful Force bond between them in the process. Shan brought the comatose Sith Lord with her to Dantooine, where the Jedi Order healed Revan's broken body, and the Jedi Council decided to take action against Malak. Joining together, the members of the Council wiped Revan's mind clean, erasing his memories and giving him a new identity as a soldier from the planet Deralia. Bastila Shan also secretly kept Revan's mask, which she had recovered before fleeing Revan's doomed flagship. Convinced that his master had died, Malak usurped Revan's mantle of Dark Lord and ruled the Empire unchallenged, brutally conquering territory after territory. When Revan was betrayed by Malak, his droid HK-47 fell into the hands of a string of various owners, many of whom ended up dead. Knights of the Old Republic 1. Malak did not know that Revan actually survived and was taken by the Jedi. Revan was dismantled from the Sith Empire of his own creation by a Jedi Bastila Shan. The brainwashed Revan is intended to be used by the Jedi in order to destroy Malak and his threat. In order to learn the source of Revan's fleet, which was created by the Starforge, and the key to defeating Darth Malak, the Council decided to rely upon Bastila Shan's bond with Revan and draw out his memories to find the answers. Shan was charged with keeping Revan's identity hidden, and she placed in command of the Hammerhead-class cruiser Endar Spire. Believing himself to be a Republic soldier, Revan was enlisted in the Republic military under a false name and with a false background, and he was assigned to the Spire. Meanwhile, Malak kept the Republic on the defensive in the ongoing war. Revan was later trained as a Jedi in the Academy on Dantooine, his bond with Bastila strengthening even more. After the training, Revan, who obviously doesn't know that Revan is his name, along with Bastila and his ragtag crew, sets off across the galaxy to find the star maps in order to lead him to the source of Malak's endless resources, which in truth is the Starforge. And star maps being Rakatan artifacts that would lead the way to their incredible weapon. During his travels on the Ebon Hawk starfighter, which was stolen from a Mandalorian named Davik Kang during the time Revan was still a brainwashed Republic soldier without any Jedi training on Dantooine, Revan would gain new allies and grew close with Bastila during their time spent together. The first fragment of the star map is found on Dantooine itself. The temple reveals that Revan and Malak found each fragment of the star map back in the day. Another one was found on Tatooine, a desert planet, in the cave of a great dragon, and in order to gain access to it, Revan had to bargain with the Sand People. There, Revan finally rediscovered his droid, HK-47, but the droid's master was a different man, and because of a damaged memory core, the droid did not recognize Revan as his creator. However, he joined him in his travels. During their quest, Shan would closely monitor Revan, searching for any possible signs that he might have been slipping back to the dark side. She still held a dislike for the man who had caused her so much damage to the galaxy, but she was also attracted to the man he had become after his mind was wiped. Instead of being the monster she imagined and feared he would be, Revan proved to be a true servant of the light side and displayed many acts of kindness throughout their journey together. Though this may have been attributed to the programmed identity that replaced his former persona, Revan's compassionate nature may have also been caused by some conscious aspects of his former personality before his fall to the dark side. She soon found herself admiring his passion and unraveled power, and despite her best efforts, began to slowly fall in love with him. The next star map fragment was found on Kashyyyk, a huge tree forest planet in the depths of the Shadowlands, and to gain access to it, Revan had to help Wookiees fend off Zerka slavers. The next fragment was found on Manan, a neutral ocean planet renowned for its healing kolto, which both the Republic and the Sith bought. To find it, Revan had to descend to the station at the source of the kolto and help the locals' god, Progenitor Fish. Another one was found on Korriban, the Sith Academy in a desert canyon, and to secure it, Revan had to pretend to be a student, complete tests, and betray or be betrayed enough to gain access to the tomb containing the map. After destroying the planet Taris and raising the Jedi Enclave on the planet Dantooine, Malak intercepted Jedi Knight Bastila Shan and an amnesiac Revan, taking them aboard the Leviathan, the flagship of his fleet. Malak was proven wrong about his beliefs regarding Revan's death, but his former master's memories as the Dark Lord had been replaced with an identity loyal to the Republic by the Jedi Council. After Malak revealed to Revan his former identity as Dark Lord, Shan allowed herself to be captured by Malak so that Revan could escape. When Revan's identity was revealed by Malak, HK-47's programming unlocked his hidden memories, and he recognized Revan as his maker. When asked by Revan, HK-47 considered the Jedi's new personality to be different in some ways, but largely the same as before, Revan's mind wipe. And the droid believed that Revan's concern for life and willingness to protect other beings was in fact an inherent trait that Revan had possessed all along. Once all 5 fragments are found, the Revan and crew, sans Bastila, head for the located Starforge, but are brought to a crash landing on a mysterious nearby planet by a defensive field. On this planet they discover that the primitive locals are the descendants of the Star 4 creators, the Rakata, and must either bargain with the wise elders of the reckless The One to gain entrance to the field-controlling temple. There Revan runs into Bastila, who has been turned to the dark side by Malak. Bastila asks him to join her, but Revan decides to continue on the path to redemption. They duel, Bastila gets wounded, and flees to the Starforge, with Revan not being able to stop her. Revan turns off the field and goes to the Starforge with his allies on his signature spaceship called Ebon Hawk. The Battle of Rakata Prime ensues, being the final battle of the Jedi Civil War. Taking place around the primary star of the Lehon system, it is fought between the natives of the Galactic Republic and Darth Malak's Sith Empire, with each side bolstered by their own Force users. While fleets of capital ships and starfighters engage in hidden battles across the massive space station and factory known as the Starforge, the Jedi, excluding Bastila Shan, who has turned to evil under Malak, led by the redeemed Revan, penetrate the station's defenses in order to confront Malak and defeat the Sith, putting an end to the bloody conflict. Revan fights Bastila, turning her back to good. Meeting Malak at the highest level of the Starforge, Revan faces his former apprentice. Malak was torturing 2 dying Jedi. Angered that Revan had returned, Malak murdered the Jedi before he sealed Revan inside the chamber, activating 6 droid replicators to kill Revan. Revan was forced to disable the replicators' computers while being attacked by a horde of droids, and when the final replicator was disabled, Revan followed Malak up the elevator to the factory's viewing level. There, Revan approached his former student, who wondered whether it would be worth it to capture Revan alive, but Malak ultimately turned and attacked the Jedi, beginning their final duel. When Malak found himself on the defensive, he leapt back and mocked Revan's ignorance of the Starforge's capabilities. Using the Starforge, Malak drew strength from the bodies of the Jedi who had been killed at Dantooine, replenishing his own for the battle against Revan. However, Revan continued to fight, wearing Malak down and destroying the machinery he used to draw energy from the Jedi. As the Republic and the Sith fleets battled all around them outside, the two fought back and forth across the platform, but ultimately Malak was driven to his knees, fatally wounded. Coughing, Malak questioned Revan as to what might have happened if he had been captured by the Jedi instead of his master, and Revan apologized for starting Malak on the Sith path, but reminded his student that he had chosen to continue down it. As Malak fell to the floor, dead, Revan deactivated his lightsaber and departed the viewing platform. Revan took back the great weapon, the Starforge, and destroyed it in the name of the Republic. With his mission complete, Revan leaves for the Temple of the Ancients on the planet Rakata Prime. There he was awarded the Cross of Glory, the Republic's highest military honor. Master Tokari himself stepped forward to recognize Revan's accomplishments, granting him the title of Jedi Knight, and declaring him to be the Jedi's prodigal knight. Shortly after the Battle of Rakata Prime, Revan returned to Korriban and drove the remnants of his empire from the Sith tomb world. In the weeks afterward, the Jedi Council approached Revan and offered to find him a master to retrain him completely in the Jedi ways, but Revan refused, as his knowledge of the Force and both the light and the dark sides was beyond that of a common Padawan. Bastila Shan also refused the council when they gave her a similar offer, and the older members of the Order became further estranged with the two when Shan and Revan decided to be married. On his wedding night, Revan drank so much that he woke up with a hangover that lasted for several days. Revan and Shan's emotional bond had brought them back from the edge of the dark side, and they saw their relationship as a source of strength that should not be denied. Revan even approached the council with an offer to share his new understanding of the Force, his belief that positive emotions helped one strengthen a connection to the Force with the other Jedi. However, the council vehemently rejected him, with several councilors arguing for his banishment from the Order. The rest of the council realized that Revan's standing as a public hero was too important for him to be banished, and they came to a compromise with Revan. The Order would not object to his marriage, and the two would remain as official Jedi, but Revan was ordered not to spread his beliefs. Shan was outraged at the Council's demands, but Revan convinced his wife that it was not a war worth fighting, and the two soon settled into an apartment on Coruscant. Awarded the rank of Jedi Master, Revan attempted to reach out to meet Surik with the Force, but was dismayed to be unable to find any sense of her presence across the galaxy. Revan shaved his beard not long after the end of the Civil War, something that allowed him to pass relatively unnoticed in public, as he rarely wore his Jedi robes. Shan and Revan kept their droid T3M4 and droid HK-47 as companions, though Revan did not often take HK-47 on trips away from their apartment on account of the droid's violent tendencies. On Coruscant, years later, Revan learns that Mitra Surik, his former Padawan, was exiled by the Order after the Mandalorian Wars. The two had developed a special bond during the war, as Surik had a powerful ability to form force bonds with her allies and friends. Upon learning of her fate, Revan felt responsible for what had happened to Surik, and he was deeply saddened to learn that one of his closest friends had suffered so much. Revan's wife Bastila Shan could not help but feel jealous of Surik's close connection with Revan, though she knew that the two had actually shared a bond of great respect similar to that of a Padawan and master, rather than a romantic relationship. Revan lived with Bastila as a loving husband, until his resurfacing memories made him leave his wife and unborn child behind in a search for answers in the unknown regions. There he was captured by the Sith and imprisoned. Revan was imprisoned in the dungeon of Darth Nihris's stronghold and pumped full of drugs to suppress his connection to the Force. And when he awoke, Nihris and Sith Lord Scourge entered his cell and began to interrogate him. When he failed to respond to their questions, their interrogation droid began to torture him, and Revan was able to resist their efforts for 4 hours before Scourge was ordered to take a break. Scourge's expertise in interrogation led him to believe that Revan would never be broken, so Nihris began to lose interest over the next weeks that followed. Over the next 3 years, Revan remained a prisoner in his cell as Scourge tortured him for information, and after the first few months, Scourge had extracted everything that Revan remembered. Revan was eventually freed from his chair, and though his cell featured a sink, refresher, and bed, he was not given any other clothes. Nihris had lost interest after 6 months, but Scourge had become obsessed with Revan. He was fascinated by Revan's strength and connection to the Force, and Revan's philosophy intrigued Scourge. During the first few months, Revan held out hope that he would be rescued by T3M4 or even his wife, but he eventually realized that no help was coming. What he didn't know, however, is that his old droid, HK-47, remained steadfastly loyal to Revan, and he set out on his own to locate his missing creator when Revan disappeared in 3954 BBY. HK-47 searched for years until he finally deactivated. Revan and Scourge gradually opened up to each other as Revan was held in total seclusion, and they eventually regarded each other less as enemies as more as objects of interest of each other. Revan also developed a minor immunity to the drugs, allowing him to sense the Force within the dungeon, but the drugs still restricted him beyond that meager extension of the Force. Revan fed his captor fragments of his knowledge and wisdom in return for knowledge on Scourge himself, and through their developing relationship, Revan learned a great deal about the Empire. 2 years after his capture, he learned the name of Darth Nihris, and another piece of information he gleaned was that the Emperor intended to invade the Republic, as well as the fact that Scourge and Nihris were opposed to the Emperor's plan. KOTOR 2. Kreia, a former Jedi and a former Master of Revan, wished to gain the full understanding of the Force, but her unconventional and novel approaches, including her training of the Jedi Knight Revan, who turned against the Jedi and founded a new Sith Empire, prompted a perturbed Jedi Council to exile her from the Jedi Order. Kreia's quest indeed led her astray. She sought contrast with the Jedi's ways by opening herself up to the dark side of the Force. But she was overwhelmed by the darkness of the Sith world of Malachor V, where the Mandalorian wars that Revan waged culminated in the deadly activation of the Mass Shadow Generator's superweapon. The echoes of the Malachor tragedy proved overbearing, transforming Kreia into the bitter Sith Lord Darth Traya. After that, Darth Traya, wanting to continue Darth Revan's legacy, re-established the Trias Academy to train, convert, and create a generation of Sith who would act as a gadfly to the Republic. Because she came to the remnants of Darth Revan's Sith Empire as his former master, the remaining Sith troopers pledged their loyalty to her as the Dark Lord of the Sith. She consolidated a Sith order of her own, made from the parts of the fallen Darth Revan's empire. After that, Trey began to hunt for Force wounds, eventually discovering Darkside users Nihilus and Scion. They were interested in rebuilding the deteriorating Sith Order, and so Traya formed a Sith Triumvirate consisting of her apprentices Nihilus and Scion. Before becoming Sith Lord, Nihilus lost everything during the Galactic Republic's war against the Mandalorian Neo-Crusaders. He survived the activation of the Mass Shadow Generator superweapon, which ended the war during the final battle at the planet of Malachor V, which surrounded the planet with a destructive spatial phenomenon known as the Mass Shadow. Experiencing the shadow that obliterated almost everything on and around the planet made Nihilus crave Force energy. The affliction painfully ravaged his body while rendering him a wound in the Force. He was found by a seeker of these, the former Jedi Kreia, who became the Sith Lord Darth Traya, and told him that she could teach him to feed his endless hunger. He accepted her offer of apprenticeship at the Trias Academy on Malachor V, where he, over time, became one of the 3 concurrent Dark Lords of the Sith. The human who would become Darth Scion was for a long time susceptible to infamy and pain. Combined together, they were intolerable to him, and he lived a life steeped in hatred. Rather than suffer in silence, Scion chose to embody his pain as his uniqueness, becoming Darth Scion, Lord of Pain. In the Great Sith War of 3996 BBY, Scion served as a Sith Marauder in Exar Kun's Sith Empire. Seeking death, Scion went to battle against the Jedi but continued to survive the encounters. He became convinced he was immortal as he built up a greater and greater tolerance for pain. Eventually, Scion was struck down, but he did not die. Instead, the pain within him welled up to agonizing levels, driving Scion to rise once more and strike down his would-be killer with his anger and hate. Scion found that he could hold his own decomposing body together with the dark side of the Force. Though this process brought him excruciating pain and forced him to continuously concentrate on his rage, Scion considered it a worthy price for immortality. Exar Kun ultimately lost the war, but Scion survived the fall of Kun's empire. In time, the Mandalorian wars fell across the galaxy as the clans of the Mandalorians invaded the Galactic Republic. Scion was shaped in these wars. When they ended and a new Sith Empire was formed by Darth Revan, the new Dark Lord of the Sith, and his apprentice Darth Malak, Scion became a Sith Lord of the Empire. Yet this one was not the last either. Scion was shocked as Revan, redeemed by the Jedi Council, succumbed to what Scion saw as weakness and betrayed the Sith. Malak was killed by his old master, and with his death the Empire came apart. Scion was at the Sith Academy of Korriban in its final days, and he watched as the Sith turned on each other. Scion survived this bout of backstabbing though. With the disintegration of the Empire, a number of Sith Lords declared themselves to be warlords of their own domains, while other remnants fled to the unknown regions. There were other Sith Lords at work in the galaxy with their own plans. One was Revan's former master, Kreia, who had taken the name Darth Traya. Traya, searching for the wounds in the Force, found Scion and another Sith Lord, Darth Nihilus, the Lord of Hunger. Scion, Traya, and Nihilus allied into one secretive Sith Triumvirate, based out on Malachor V. Their goal was the annihilation of the Jedi Order and the restoration of the Sith to power. Traya became the master of both Sith Lords, and Scion learned much from her. At Trias Academy, a hidden Sith stronghold on Malachor V, Scion learned more of pain. Together, the three powerful dark side users formed a Triumvirate with Darth Traya at its head. The trio chose individual titles for themselves, Darth Nihilus becoming the Lord of Honor and Sion becoming the Lord of Pain. The apprentices grew in strength throughout their training. As time passed by, the Sith Lord's ideals became divergent. Traya and Revance's legacy fell apart from Darth Nihilus's slavery to hunger, and Sion's chaining to his intent on channeling his pain onto others, his crusade against the Jedi. Traya underestimated her pupil's depravity after she taught Nihilus the ability to devour entire worlds, and after Sion started to grow weary of her whispers in his skull and teachings that he deemed to weaken the Sith, the apprentices plotted against her. Sion and Nihilus confronted her in the Traya Score. Sion defeated the Traya in combat, while Nihilus snapped her energy. The two Sith then combined power to sever her connection to the Force and sent her into exile. After casting Traya out of the Sith Triumvirate, Sion and Nihilus began an assassination campaign against the Jedi, unwittingly aiding their former Sith master. Because of this, the Jedi, who were either killed by the Sith or in hiding, were nearly gone from the galaxy. Watching powerlessly as the two Sith Lords then led the first Jedi purge under the command of Nihilus, thereby reducing the entirety of the Jedi Order to all but a handful of individuals scattered throughout the known galaxy, Traya soon came to believe that neither the Jedi nor the Sith deserved to win their seemingly endless war, as both groups stripped their members of all individuality and reduced them to mere dependents of the Force, who then ceaselessly wrought war and devastation across the galaxy. But most of all, her experiences caused her to develop a deep-seated hatred for the Force itself and all that it represented on a philosophical level, and yearn for its destruction. As she felt this would emancipate the universe from the sort of existential enslavement she believed the Force subjected it and all its inhabitants to. Thus, Darth Traya renounced her Sith title and persona, and reverted once more to her previous identity of Kreia, now neither a Sith, nor a Jedi, nor anything in between, but rather something altogether outside that simplistic dichotomy. Kreia had left Malachor 5 and returned to Republic space, masterminding a plot of revenge. Kreia sought Mitra Surik, also known as the Jedi Exile, her former Jedi student who served as a general under Revan during the Mandalorian Wars. Surik helped defeat the Mandalorians during the final battle at Malachor 5 by ordering the activation of the Mass Shadow Generator, a devastating weapon which left a wound in the Force. Beneath numerous rumors and unconfirmed reports, Kreia had found a means to deafen the galaxy to the Force. She sought to exploit her former student's talent in the Force bonding in order to create another wound, greater than the one before. This wound's echoes would travel forever, never reaching their destination. Meanwhile, Nihilus's affliction developed to the point where the Dark Lord was forced to call upon the dark side of the Force to encase his spirit within his mask and armor to stay alive. He and Sion caused the virtual extinction of the Jedi Order. Jedi Master Atris, who some time ago condemned Mitra Surik after she returned to face the Council's judgment after the devastating events of the Battle of Malachor 5 and suggested that she had fallen to the dark side just as Revan had, called a secret Jedi convocation on the Miraluka world of Kotor in an attempt to find the threat that was stalking the Jedi, which is the armies of Darth Nihilus and Darth Sion. She then leaked knowledge to the Conclave's existence in the hopes of drawing out the Sith. She succeeded, but with dire consequences. Darth Nihilus devastated the surface of the planet, wiping out all life on Kotor, including the Jedi gathered there. However, Atris survived, and she remained in seclusion, surrounding herself with Echani handmaidens who could not feel the Force. She planned to rebuild the Jedi Order and established a Jedi Academy in the old irrigation system on Talos 4. However, she was heavily influenced by the many Sith holocrons she had collected in her efforts to fight and understand the Sith. The holocrons fed her bitterness, and she slowly and quietly fell to the dark side and started to think she was Darth Traya, the Queen of Betrayal. Nihilus, responsible for the devastation of the planet Kotor, killed and absorbed the force energy of the Jedi at the Conclave on Kotor, along with every other living thing on the world, save one Miraluka woman named Wizas Mar. Mar was collected from the surface and Nihilus brought her upon his flagship called Ravager. She, like him in the past, was left as a lone survivor after a catastrophe, and so Nihilus felt a sort of sympathy for her. Taken aboard Nihilus's flagship, Wizas Mar awoke to find that her flesh, where her eyes had been removed. Distraught, she sought out the Dark Lord Nihilus, questioning why she alone had been spared. Fractured and vulnerable at best, overwhelmed by the dark power surrounding her, Mar allowed Nihilus to take her for his own. In an attempt to make her believe in his cause, Nihilus showed her a vision, forcing her to see the galaxy in a way that her people never could. Sentient beings on other planets, disconnected from the life surrounding them, unable to feel the Force. The vision severely damaged Mar's foresight, which she, as a Miraluka, had to solely rely on, having no physical sight, and she became convinced that all life must die. She came to believe that Nihilus fed upon the ugliness of the galaxy and left silence, and that the removal of this wretchedness was bringing stillness and order to where there had once been chaos. Accepting Nihilus's unspoken invitation, Mar became his apprentice and was given a meditation chamber in addition to living quarters, which she called her cell, aboard the Ravager. As Nihilus's shadow hand, Mar was compelled to do her master's bidding. Mitra Surik spent time wandering around the galaxy, trying to find a place for herself. Details of Mitra Surik's adventures in the Outer Rim are unknown, but it is known that she, the exile of the Order, returned to known space. Jedi Master Atris arranged for Surik's return to the Republic and exposed her presence in the Corvor database in hopes of using her as bait for the Sith, who took it, thinking that Mitra Surik was the last Jedi. The Republic warship Harbinger, which had been ordered by the Republic Admiral Karath Onasi, a veteran of the Mandalorian Wars, soon arrived to pick up Mitra Surik. When it arrived, Mitra Surik and her crew found the ship derelict. The ship was empty inside, save for the battered body of Sith Lord Darth Sion. The Ebon Hawk, a small freighter that once had played a major role in a Jedi civil war, being the ship of Revan himself, flew also seemingly deserted, was picked up as well. In the next few days, crew aboard the ship began to disappear, when Darth Sion finally awoke, saying that he had come for the Jedi Surik. Cloaked Sith assassins revealed themselves and slaughtered the ship's crew en masse. In the ensuing chaos, it went unnoticed that an HK-50 series assassin droid unit had drugged Surik and sealed her away. As the ship died around them, a former Jedi Master named Kreia, who was the exiled Sith Lord Darth Traya, found Surik, brought her back to the Ebon Hawk, piloted now by Atton Rand. He was the Galactic Republic military soldier and fought loyally under Revan in the Mandalorian Wars. Together, they attempted to flee. Unfortunately, they attracted the attention of the now fully operational warship, which fired on the freighter, damaging it severely and nearly killing both Surik and Kreia. With the help of the utility droid T3M4, Surik was taken care of, and the Ebon Hawk was guided to the nearby Purgus mining facility. Both unconscious, Kreia and Surik arrived safely on Purgus too, thanks to the droid T3M4, who was able to get the ship working well enough to get to the colony. Mitra Surik regained consciousness and attempted to escape the planet and the mining facility, recruiting Kreia and Atton Rand to help her. The Sith-taken Harbinger ship finds Mitra Surik and her company. Kreia provided the exiled Jedi insight that it was under the control of the enemy, and one who would not let them go without bloodshed. Kreia said that the assassins aboard were those who attacked the Ebon Hawk, and they arrived quicker than she expected. Together with Atton Rand, Mitra deducted that the docked ship must possess the asteroid orbital drift charts needed to pilot a safe course through the Pargasus II asteroid field, and the trio boarded the Harbinger to take the codes, desperate to escape death. Once aboard the Harbinger, the trio took to its bridge per Rand's plan, though not before Kreia reprimanded the Exile for being distracted at the airlock and thus not being mindful of the present, allowing their enemies to gather while they wasted time. Fighting their way to the warship's bridge through the occasional Sith assassins, they took the drift charge from the Harbinger's navicomputer left. However, the Exile, Mitra Surik, stopped by the quarter she formerly inhabited. Telling Surik to move with haste, Kreia allowed her to salvage her possessions before moving on together. The Exile and her companions stopped again at the ship's medical bay, finding a holo recording of a scatter map breaking out of a kotor tank there. Proceeding to the engine deck, Atton Rand had a bad feeling, and the trio were approached by a scarred man soon after. The Sith Lord Sion said he had come to warn the Exile that she knew not what path she would walk, and Kreia drew her weapon, telling Mitra that this battle was hers alone, and that she was not defenseless. Before engaging the scarred man, Kreia stated that he could not kill what he could not see, and that power had blinded him long ago, and instructed Mitra to run, telling her that she herself would join her shortly. A door sealed between Kreia and the exiled Jedi, and the scarred man Darth Sion confronted his former master. To Kreia, Sion spoke of his sensing that she was faint in the Force, weak, although Kreia retorted that his senses betrayed him. She further told Sion that his failing was to have fallen so far and learned nothing, yet the Sith Lord placed the failure on his former master. Sion told Kreia that her cause to seek the Jedi was a lost one, since they were mostly eliminated and whose hopes for survival lay in the Exile. But Kreia remained staunch in her position. A duel ensued and Kreia lost her left hand to Sion's blade. Because of her unnatural first bond with Kreia, Surik felt the great pain of losing the limb herself while making her way to the Ebon Hawk alongside Atton Rand and later T3M4. After joining the Exile's party at the Ebon Hawk, Kreia said that either they trigger a chain reaction that would destroy the surrounding asteroid field and thereby escape the Sith forces, or die. As the Harbinger attempted to bring down the Ebon Hawk, it fired upon a nearby asteroid, bringing the field and the Pergassus mine colony to flames. Ebon Hawk narrowly escaped a fiery doom and managed to jump into hyperspace, drawing past our series of dangers to a close. In the safety of hyperspace, Kreia explained before the crew of the Ebon Hawk that the Republic warship that fired upon them moments ago was the Harbinger, which was originally set for Talos IV but was seized by Sith seeking to hand down the Exile, the last of the Jedi, regardless of her status of being exiled. Survivors of the Jedi Civil War were Jedi no longer, and they would not help Mitra Surik. They set course to Talos, since it was the only available destination in the Pergas facility's navigational charts. Kreia then left to the crew quarters, and Atton Rand advised Mitra to tend to Kreia, telling her that he sensed great pain rolling off Kreia, and speculating that the older woman was too proud to show any weakness, especially to her. Furthermore, Rand told the Exile his observation that what she thought mattered much to Kreia, and Kreia wanted herself to be respected by her student. On why she had felt her pain, Kreia replied to Surik that the bond between them could be fatal. If one of them died, the other would too. Bound by the hands of death, Kreia intruded upon the company of Surik, but remained vague on her ties to the former Padawan, Revan. Surik also had no way of knowing where the ship had come from, since Kreia had the only means of accessing the Ebon Hawk's navicomputer. Kreia realized that this Jedi exile, a human female named Mitra Surik, was a void of sorts, a wound in the Force itself, having unconsciously severed her connection to it in the climax of the Battle of Malachor V, carrying with her the countless deaths and unmitigated suffering she undeniably helped wreak in its wake. The Jedi Order, believing to have seen the death of the Force itself within Surik, cast her out of the Order, but Kreia decides to seize upon this opportunity and take Surik on as a student. With Mitra Surik's power, and with the knowledge of Darth Nihilus' damaged condition, Kreia intended to bring her plans into fruition. While being pursued by the Sith in the asteroid field around Paragus, laser fire from the hijacked warship ignited the volatile fuel within the asteroids. The resulting explosion destroyed both the facility and the planet itself, though the Ebon Hawk and the Sith on board the Harbinger were able to escape. When Surik and her new crew arrived at the massive Citadel station in orbit around Talos 4, the Ebon Hawk and T3M4 were stolen and brought to the Talosian surface, where they were held for questioning about the Paragus explosion. After a Talosian investigation proved their innocence, they were asked by Lieutenant Dol Garen to stay on station until the Republic's inquiry was complete. Instead, Surik allied herself with the Ithorian force adept Chodo Habat, eventually gathering even enough evidence to expose Jana Lurso, the executive of Zerka outpost on the Citadel station. After gathering the necessary evidence to bring Lorso down, and after Surik saved Habat from mercenaries hired by Zerka to kill him and his herd, he allowed Surik and her companions to use one of their shuttles to reach Talos' surface, where they were shut down by Zerka Air Defense Tower. An Erodian Zabrak engineer named Bao Adur, who had designed the mass shadow generator and served under Surik at Malachor 5, saw the crash and pulled the three unharmed from the wreckage. While on the surface, they learned that the Ebon Hawk had been taken to the old planetary aqueducts in the polar region of the planet. Commandeering a shuttle from an abandoned military compound, Surik and her companions traveled to the aqueducts and found Jedi Master Atris there, a former member of the council that sentenced Surik into exile. Atris had Surik's companions placed in force cages while the handmaidens brought Mitra Surik before her to be questioned. Not long before this, Atris had discovered Surik's identity and was surprised at the revelation. She had not expected to see her again after the council sentenced her to exile. At first she hoped that Surik had returned to admit that the council had been right and to face up to her crimes, but that was not the case. Surik's presence stirred unpleasant feelings, which Atris had all but forgotten and hoped lost. These feelings showed themselves when she accused Mitra Surik of walking the dark path, when Atris's words were the ones that sounded bitter and resentful. In fact, she was so angry about what Surik did that she refused to believe that Surik had meant to help others in the Mandalorian wars, and said she simply went off for the adventure and the excitement of battle. Atris continued to berate Surik by blaming her for the destruction of Paragus II. She was shocked to learn that the Sith were behind it, and even more shocked when she learned that the Sith were hunting Mitra Surik. She reluctantly accepted Surik's offer of help in defeating them, and instructed her to gather other Jedi on Dantooine so that action could be taken and a council could be had. And Atris herself was attempting to recover lost Jedi teachings and had surrounded herself with several Ichani sisters. These sisters, known as the Handmaidens, had vowed not to learn the ways of the Jedi. Surik and her party left with the Ebon Hawk and T3M4. When they left, the droid revealed that they had managed to download Atris's database while being held, including a recording of Surik's trial and records of where the last 5 remaining Jedi Masters were hiding. Atris on Talos, Kavar on Onderon, Rook Lamar on Dantooine, Zek Kai El on Nar Shaddaa, and Lonavash on the Sith tomb world Korriban. Coincidentally, although Kreia believed otherwise, these were the same 5 Jedi on the Council that cast Surik out of the Jedi Order to become the Exile. However, Brianna was ordered by Atris to sneak aboard the Ebon Hawk and aid Surik in her mission in order to monitor her activities and in order to confirm that Surik still served the light side of the Force. The crew, together with its newest member, went off to these worlds in search of the Jedi, in an attempt to unite them against the Sith and to find the answers as to why Surik was sentenced to exile. Meanwhile, Mrs. Mar felt a growing disturbance in the Force. Perceiving it as a faint echo rippling through the galaxy, she sought out her master to inform him of the phenomenon, only to find that he had felt it as well. Curious and perhaps uneasy with the discovery, Nihilus demanded to know if Mar was capable of tracing the origin of the anomaly. After confirming the possibility, he sent her to find and bring the source to him. During her adventures, Surik met many beings who became her companions. She found many of them to be Force-sensitive, and thus she trained them in the Jedi ways. Meanwhile, Kreia taught Surik to carefully choose between actions, asking the Jedi to view the ethical implications of all quests undertaken. Kreia seemed to show that the galaxy and its inhabitants' morals were far more complicated than the basic tenets of the light and the dark sides of the Force. As Surik grew in power, Kreia watched as the struggling Republic was unknowingly strengthened through the Jedi's search. During this time, Surik met with Visas Mar, who came to assassinate her. Visas Mar infiltrated Surik's starship, the Ebon Hawk, incapacitated the crew, and engaged Surik in lightsaber combat, only to be defeated, wounded, and have her lightsaber broken. Convinced of Surik's superior strength, Mar yielded and begged Surik to end her life, for the alternative was death by her master's hand for her failure. When Surik refused, Mar pledged her life to her, seemingly abandoning Nihilus before losing consciousness. Surik then took the unconscious woman to the ship's medical bay. This act of mercy was met by surprise from Surik's companion, the pilot of the Ebon Hawk, Aton Rand, who was uneasy in the presence of powerful Force users, as the Mira Luca were known to be. He also expressed his amazement at seeing a Mira Luca Sith, saying that he had heard of Mira Luca Jedi but never Sith, further speculating that he was unsure as to how to go about killing one. The idea of killing Mar was met by incredulity on the part of Surik, who voiced her regret for having hurt the Mira Luca during their duel. Rand reassured her that Mar's injuries would heal, noticing that even though some of her wounds were severe, she looked like she had suffered far more in the past. Mitra accepted Mar into the ship's crew and began training her in the ways of a Jedi Sentinel. While Rand grudgingly accepted Mar, Kreia, Surik's informal master, met her arrival with barely concealed contempt. She was of the opinion that the Mira Luca's ability to see through the Force was wasted on her people and that she should have been considered a servant. Furthermore, Kreia felt it necessary to remind Mitra Surik that the Sith were often betrayed by their own apprentices, and that even though Visas Mar had pledged herself to Mitra Surik, she was bound to other masters, thus insinuating that Mar's loyalty would always be suspect. Wary of Kreia's attitude towards Mar, Surik nonetheless sought her advice regarding the change Mar had brought about her in her eyesight during their clash. While Kreia explained this alteration of Surik's perception was nothing that hadn't already been present, the elder woman had nothing but utter disdain for the forceful and crude methods that were the mark of the Sith. Despite Mar devoting herself to the light side and to the search of the remaining Jedi Masters, Mitra Surik knew she could not hide her presence for long. However, she also knew that she had an inroad into finding at least one of the Sith Lords who was hunting her, Sion. Despite that, during the training sessions, Visas Mar's admiration for Surik grew, and she even taught Surik how to see through the Force as a Mira Luca could. Mitra Surik, becoming a spiritual mentor of sorts to others, similar to that of Kreia, helped Bao-Dur overcome his guilt over the lives lost at the Battle of Malachor V, and train him in the ways of a Jedi Guardian. When two Twi'leks on Nar Shaddaa warned Surik about Aton Rand, saying he was a killer and not just a soldier, she approached Rand about this. Initially upset about being asked about his past, Rand however revealed his past as a soldier under the Republic during the Mandalorian Wars, and as a Sith trooper during the Jedi Civil War. He told her that he decided to leave the Sith after he killed a female Jedi, with whom he fell in love, after she showed him the Force. After Surik forgave him for killing that Jedi and welcomed his honesty, Rand asked her if she could train him to be a Jedi, and Surik agreed, and trained him as a Jedi Sentinel. Mitra Surik and her companions slowly but steadily found the Jedi Masters, who hid after the Sith nearly eradicated all the light side of the Force users. First they found Jedi Master Zaz-Kai-El on Nar Shaddaa. Then, on Onderon, with the help of Mandalore the Preserver, Mitra was able to get to the Jedi Master Kavar. Mandalore the Preserver also joined Surik not only because he felt she needed an ally against the Sith, but also he intended to look for Mandalorian clans on other worlds, so that he could reunite them under his leadership. She then helped Mandalore in finding scattered clans on Nar Shaddaa and Dantooine. She, along with his company, also helped save the falsely accused Queen Telia on the planet Onderon, becoming part of a civil war and then ending it. As Atris sought desperately to understand Surik's motifs, which was part of the reason for her keeping of the holocrons, she clung even more desperately to her perfect view of the Jedi. However, in light of Surik's choices, she knew that either she or the Council was wrong. Though she placed Surik in the wrong, it only made her more unsettled, as inwardly she respected her choice. The Lord of Pain, Darth Sion, after stalking Surik for so long, grew attached to her, practically falling in love, although he knew that this just weakened him. Mitra Surik went in search of the Jedi Master Lona Wash on the ancient Sith homeworld of Korriban. After Kreia telepathically guided her through the Valley of the Dark Lords, she entered the abandoned Sith Academy and found that Darth Sion had killed Wash no more than an hour after they landed. Before Surik and her companions escaped the academy, they were confronted by Sion, who told her that he studied and immersed himself in her, and that he knew of the path she walked in exile. He said that he knew her teacher, Kreia, and of the fires that raged in Xun while the Republic died around her. Sion further stated that he knew of war and battle, and said that he knew of Malachor V. Sion said that Surik knew what it meant to be broken, and warned her that Kreia would destroy her as she had destroyed him, and said that he could end her suffering at Kreia's hands before it began. With these words, Surik and her companions fought the Lord of Pain, striking him down multiple times. However, the Dark Lord would recover from the fatal injuries and keep fighting. Through the Force, Kreia informed Surik that Sion was not a beast of flesh and blood, and that it was not a battle that could be won. She told her that while there would be another opportunity, now was not the right time, not while Korriban ran through Sion. Surik thanked Kreia for the information, and she and her companions fled the Sith Academy. After confronting Surik, Sion called off his assassins on purpose and allowed her to escape. After locating and conversing with all of the remaining Jedi Masters, Surik returned to Dantooine to find and rebuild Jedi Enclave. There, Masters Lamar, Kavar, and El had formed a council in which they would decide her fate. The Masters concluded that, through her actions at Malachor V, she had become a wound in the Force. They stated that she carried the deaths of all who died in the battle within her, and that she regained her connection to the Force by feeding on death and leeching the life energy of her companions. According to the Masters, the Sith had learned their ability to feed on the Force from her, and thus she was a threat to all living beings, and possibly the Force itself. And in time she might possess the same magnitude of power like Darth Nihilus, and ultimately consume the galaxy, which wasn't true. However, they deemed it necessary that she be stripped of the Force with or without her consent. She submitted to their sentence. Having re-established her previous sentence of exile, they attempted to strip her of the Force, but before they could finish, Kreia stormed into the meeting to save Surik at the last moment. Mitra, still under her stasis established by the Jedi Council, was left helpless and watched as Kreia, who'd revealed her identity as the former Sith Lord Darth, used the Force to drain the Jedi Masters of their powers, putting them through the same suffering Surik had felt on Malachor V. However, the Jedi did not let go of the Force. They died as a result of their dependency of the Force. While Surik lay unconscious, Kreia was led to the Jedi Master Atris for judgment by one of Surik's companions, the Ichani handmaiden Brianna. Journeying to the Talosian Jedi Academy, Kreia revealed that Atris had herself fallen to the dark side by the Sith relics she gathered, but could not admit it even to herself. That Atris, bathed in the knowledge of the Sith, however limited the truth such teachings held, and Atris took a step Kreia herself once took, betrayed by herself after hearing the echoes of Malachor V. The real Darth Treya stripped Atris of her self-denials and allowed her to finally accept that she was betrayed by the Dark Persona. Exposed by Kreia's words, Atris then asked the former Jedi where Mitra Surik was, to which Kreia replied that the exiled Jedi would come, asserting that the one Atris exiled could still be saved, though also remarking that it was too late for herself and Atris to be saved. Atris embraced herself as the second Darth Treya, the Queen of Betrayal, and met with Mitra Surik, who would return to her sanctum on Talos to confront her for the last time. Leaving the fallen Jedi Master in her chamber of Sith relics, Kreia left. Between the departure of Kreia and the coming of Surik, Atris fully embraced the dark side within her. Mitra Surik finally regained her strength and departed for Talos IV to find and confront her. There she found Brianna defeated at the hands of a corrupted Atris. In order to save Brianna, Surik was thus forced to confront Atris, who had fallen to the dark side, and, in Krea's words, became a Darth Traya. Per the machinations of the first true Darth Traya, Surik and the new Traya confronted each other once more on Talos. After Surik defeated Atris, the victor persuaded the fallen Jedi Master to forgive her and helped Atris see the folly of her beliefs. Through Atris, Krea manipulated the Exile Mitra to confront and defeat her unresolved past to progress towards the completion of her training. Atris told Surik that Krea had fled to Malachor V to wait for those there for a final confrontation, and confirmed her identity as one of the Lords of the Sith, one of those that had murdered the Jedi. After the duel, Brianna pledged her allegiance to Surik, renouncing her title of Last of the Handmaidens and embracing her true name. Surik then left Atris in the Academy until her role in nearly destructing the Jedi could be judged by Surik's apprentice Misal and the new Jedi Order. Krea returned to Malachor V, where she confronted Darth Sion and forced him to submit to her will. Krea reclaimed her mantle of Darth Traya and took command of what remained of the forces of the Sith Triumvirate on Malachor V. Traya intended to sacrifice herself to open up the larger wound in the Force in order to destroy it. However, Traya elected to wait for Mitra Surik to come to her for answers and a final confrontation. Nihilus was tricked by Krea into initiating the Battle of Talos IV in an attempt to absorb a Jedi Academy that lacked any Force-sensitive aside from the headmistress. Nihilus met a large Republic and Mandalorian fleet at Talos IV that distracted him. Meanwhile, his flagship, the Ravager, was secretly boarded by a small force consisting of Surik, Mar, and Mandalore the Preserver, as well as his Mandalorians. The trio confronted Nihilus in the ensuing duel, while the Mandalorians rigged explosives that destroyed the ship. In the final test of allegiance, Visas Mar confronted Darth Nihilus with her fate resting solely on Mitra Surik, who gave her the chance to stand up to the one who had wounded her. As they were taken aback by the Sith Lord's powers, Nihilus stunned Surik and Mar, offered her life in exchange for sparing her. This show of devotion distracted Nihilus long enough for Surik to recover. Surik realized that Mar was a link between Nihilus and the power bound within the Ravager. Struggling as she was with the weight of that power, Visas Mar exploited the bond to her former master and blocked his connection to the Force, momentarily stunning him. Together, Mandalore, Mar, and Surik were able to defeat Nihilus. Before they could make haste to flee the destruction of the ship, Mar felt compelled to behold what lay beneath Nihilus's death mask in order to sever the last remaining bond between them. Visas Mar and Mitra Surik proceeded to Malachor V for a final confrontation with Krea. After crashing on the surface of Malachor V, Surik proceeded to the Trayas Academy despite mentally sensing the anguish of all who had perished there, and physically feeling the effects of the intense gravity of the planet crushing down on her, something she would later recount as one of the worst moments of her life. Traya and Darth Sion were hidden in the depths of the Trayas Academy, and Mitra Surik had to demonstrate her strength with the Force and skill in lightsaber combat against hordes of Sith assassins, lords, and marauders before confronting Darth Sion himself. Sion confronted Surik and told her of his love for her, though he could not describe it exactly, knowing that she must fall if he was to remain strong. Sion gave Surik two choices: to either return to the surface of Malachor and let the planet take her life, or he would kill her himself, as either death would be far more merciful than what Krea had in store for her, should she fail. However, neither Sion nor Surik were willing to back down, and they battled. After being struck down several times, Surik finally convinced him that his struggle was futile, and he surrendered his life. Sion's last words were to tell her that she was Krea's ultimate weakness, just as she had been his. Mitra Surik then found Traya in the core of the Academy. Traya explained her overall goal to free the universe from the Force and its influence, as well as her hatred for it, and its control over every single being's destiny. Traya told Surik that she must let go of everything other than herself to achieve her full potential, to be a fully freed individual, to live and be herself in the most pure form possible. Traya then delivered unto Surik an ultimatum: either kill her, or Traya would kill Surik. Thus, Surik was forced to betray her now former master, as her new former master did her, thus severing their ties and letting go of each other. Traya engaged Surik in a duel which ended with her student slicing her remaining hand off. Traya then tried to convince Surik to kill her, to let her die, but the Exile refused. Angered, Traya used the Force to control 3 lightsabers against Surik, but the Jedi bested the lightsabers. Despite Krea's betrayals and deceptions, Surik forgave the Sith Lord for everything that had happened. She still tried to save Kreia, who told her she already had, and that by killing her, Surik had awarded Kreia more than she could possibly know. She confessed that she truly loved Surik, not only because she felt the Jedi was her greatest student, but because she was a true Jedi. Before dying from the wounds dealt to her by Surik, Kreia chose to give her one last gift. Drawing upon the power of the Force that radiated from Malachor V and casting a prediction of both the future of the galaxy and that of Surik's friends, her disciples. Kreia told Surik that her followers were the lost Jedi, the true Jedi upon which a new Jedi Order would be built. Kreia then told her student of her hopes that she would follow Revan's path, but said that Surik and Revan were different, one being the death of the Force, the other being its heart. Kreia said that Mitra Surik could follow Revan to the unknown regions, or take one of the ships in Malachor's orbit and depart the planet, or remain on Malachor to wait for the others, those who were touched by the Force, those who would come in time. Kreia also said that Surik could also return to her exile, where her presence could no longer affect the actions of others, and said that there was no dishonor in any of those choices, asking Surik that she make her choice without any regret. After Mitra told her that she would follow Revan as she did a decade before, Kreia finally surrendered her life to what she once despised, the Force. Surik then proceeded to destroy the Treyas Academy, bringing an end to this call of darkness. Then Bao-Dur Remote activated the mass shadow generator in order to completely destroy the planet. The crew of the badly damaged Ebon Hawk retrieved Mitra Surik and escaped the planet. After Kreia's final lesson and the fall of the Dark Jedi, Surik returned to Dantooine to complete her retraining as a Jedi, but it was not long before Surik's droid, T3M4, revealed that he had been carrying information about Revan's fate the entire time he had been in her possession. The droid stubbornly refused to show her the information to anyone other than Bastila Shan, and so Surik took the droid to Shan's home on Coruscant. Together, the two watched as T3 revealed that the Ebon Hawk had crashed on the planet Nathema, once a member world of the Sith Empire. As they watched, the recording revealed that Revan had been captured by a Sith male, a race, though extinct since the end of the Great Hyperspace War. Unbeknownst to them, the Sith was Lord Scourge. Surik resolved to rescue Revan from whatever fate had befallen him. Before Surik's departure, Shan revealed that she possessed Revan's mask. She presented it to Surik to return to Revan, in the hope that it would restore his memories and aid in his escape. Leaving her apprentices behind to resurrect the fallen Jedi Order, Surik and T3 boarded the Ebon Hawk and set off for Nathema. Surik got to the planet and immediately became disturbed by the void, to the point of feeling physically ill. In contrast to the feelings of horror and death that she could feel at Malachor V, Nathema was just dead. She realized that Revan weren't there, as weren't the Sith Lords who had once arrived on Nathema. Surik surmised that the Sith Emperor Vitiate had invited the other Sith Lords to his planet as a trap, and once they arrived had enacted the Sith sorcery that had destroyed the world. Through fortunate happenstance, Surik also learned that Vitiate had had his people searching for Dromund Kaas, a long-lost colony world of the Sith. With T3's expert slicing skills, she was able to determine both the location of the world as well as a safe hyperspace route. With this knowledge, the pair set course for the unknown world and left Nathema silent once more. While imprisoned, Revan opened himself up to the Force in meditation and reached out to Bastila Shan. But the Force instead showed him the face of Mitra Surik and gave him the unshakable belief that she was coming to rescue him. Ebon Hawk reached Dromund Kaas without incident, the capital of the Sith Empire evidently believing itself invulnerable to attack or infiltration, since the Empire had been unknown to the Republic for over a millennia. Through several intermediaries she was able to buy off, Surik was finally able to arrange a meeting with the Sith from T3's recording. Though the meeting was initially marred by a skirmish in which Surik slayed the 4 soldiers he had brought along as escort, she found herself in the curious position of having a civil, if tense, conversation with Lord Scourge. He informed her that Revan was a prisoner of his own master, Darth Nihilus, and that Revan had foretold of her coming to rescue him. The two eventually agreed to an alliance of convenience because they shared the common goal of stopping the Sith Emperor's plan to invade the Republic. Surik agreed to wait while Scourge arranged circumstances where they would be best able to free Revan from captivity. With his own intelligence and resources, Scourge schemed to destroy Darth Nihilus by exposing her and the other Dark Council members' intrigues against the Emperor to him. The Emperor's retaliation was swift and brutal. Surik and Scourge were able to take advantage of the chaos as the elite Imperial Guards units assaulted Nihilus' personal compound, killing every soldier, charge, and slave loyal to the traitorous Sith Lady. Amid the chaos, Mitra, Surik, and Lord Scourge were able to infiltrate the detention area and rescue Revan from the cell he had called home for the past 3 years. In the moments before leaving the detention area, Surik remembered that she was still carrying Revan's mask and presented it to him. He had a brief moment of recognition before passing out from the flood of his life's memories returning to him. In those vulnerable minutes, Darth Nihilus entered the detention area with the intent of killing Revan. Surik and Scourge were forced to fight Darth Nihilus on their own. The ensuing battle was entirely one-sided. Mitra, Surik, and Scourge, despite their formidable skills, were no match for a member of the Dark Council. In what seemed sure to be their final moments, Surik witnessed a reborn Revan intervene. He has donned his mask and stepped out into the corridor with his hood raised. Countering Nihilus' declaration of victory, Revan extended his hands and absorbed the bolts of lightning before unleashing them back upon their caster, reducing Nihilus to a pile of ash in a matter of seconds. Saddened that the guards had been slain, Revan stopped and bowed his head over their bodies, but Surik interrupted him, and Scourge delivered his lightsaber to Revan before the 4 of them fled the stronghold. They rushed to Scourge's waiting speeder and sped away from the embattled structure, returning to the cave where Surik and Scourge had first met. After he dropped Revan, Surik, and T3M4 off, Scourge returned to Kaas City in order to find out the situation, and Revan asked him to bring back water and soap so that he could wash. At Mitra Surik's request, T3M4 rolled forward and displayed a message from Bastila Shan, a hologram of Revan's wife holding their 3-year-old son. In the message, Bastila told Revan that it was their son's birthday, and Revan removed his mask as his son waved to the camera. Shan's choice of the name Vanner amused Revan, as it was an anagram of his own name, and Surik retreated as Revan watched the rest of the message. When the video ended, Revan thanked Mitra Surik for rescuing him, and he praised her accomplishments and strength before asking her if she would like to watch the message from Shan with him. Surik accepted, and the two were still watching it when Scourge returned to the cave several hours later. T3M4 shut off the hologram when Scourge arrived, and Revan answered Scourge's questions as to the people's identity, though the Sith Lord soon remembered that the two were not friends and stopped asking. Revan and Surik then listened to Scourge's report. The Emperor had killed all 12 members of the Dark Council, and he had also instituted martial law and imposed a curfew, and Revan then explained what he had remembered of his past and how he and Malak had been lured into a trap and corrupted. Their discussion soon turned to the possibility that the Emperor would attempt to repeat the ritual he performed on Nathema there on Dramont Cass, though Revan and Scourge concluded that the Emperor would not. Scourge, Surik, and Revan then agreed that they would try and kill the Emperor, as it was their best chance at eliminating the threat he posed to the galaxy, and Revan suggested that they all get some rest before dawn. While Surik settled into meditation, Revan resumed watching his wife's message, but he was soon interrupted by restless Scourge. The Sith Lord sought to learn more of Revan's view of the Force and visions, and Revan admitted that he had been bluffing about his vision earlier, despite the fact that he received a true vision shortly afterward. Revan and Scourge's discussion led Revan to admit that he was willing to die if that was what the Force had ordained for him, and Revan recognized and embraced the possibility that it was in fact another's responsibility to defeat the Emperor. Revan also admitted the real reason he had left behind his family and the Republic. He wanted to protect his son's future, and he was more than willing to die for that. Scourge was irritated by Revan's self-sacrificing mentality and left Revan alone, and the Jedi once again continued to watch the recording over and over until dawn. Overnight, Scourge experienced his first vision, seeing himself and his Jedi allies broken and defeated at the feet of the Emperor. With Scourge's aid, the trio, united by one goal, were able to infiltrate the Imperial Citadel in Cass City. As Scourge had provided the information that allowed the Emperor to act against the Dark Council, they faced little challenge from the Imperial guards protecting the palace. The ruse was ended when the guard captain finally saw Revan's mask, recognizing him as the man who had tried to infiltrate the Citadel years earlier. A battle quickly broke out between the trio of unlikely allies and the formidable and fanatically devoted Imperial guards. Meetra, Surik, and Scourge continued to battle the guards as Revan pressed on into the throne room to challenge the Sith Emperor Vitiate himself. The Sith ruler had not risen from his throne the entire time, and Revan ignored his enemy's words as he rushed forward to confront him. Standing perfectly still after rising to his feet, the Emperor gathered his strength and unleashed a wave of energy that lifted Revan off his feet and threw him backward. But the Jedi rolled to his feet and advanced again as the Emperor reached out with his mind. This time Revan opened himself to the Force and allowed both the light and the dark sides to flow through him before he released the Force in its purest form, an action that lit up the air between him and the Emperor and sent both of them flying. Recovering, Revan raced toward his enemy and deflected the Emperor's first bolt of lightning, though it stopped him in his tracks, and he proceeded to knock the next aside, dodged the following bolt, and he deflected the final attack straight back at the Emperor. Angered, the Sith Lord gathered his strength and unleashed a massive storm of lightning at Revan, and the Jedi Master's attempts to absorb and contain the energy like before failed. The power of the attack overwhelmed him and sent electricity coursing through his body, boiling his skin and causing his mask to superheat on his burning face. Collapsing to the floor, Revan cried out as T-3M4 distracted the Emperor with his flamethrower and was destroyed as a result, sacrificing himself to rescue Revan from the Emperor's attack. Unable to rise, Revan called on the Force to heal his wounds, but he could do nothing as the Emperor approached him with Revan's own lightsaber and prepared to kill the Jedi. Even though they were outnumbered by the skilled opponents, both Scourge and Meetra Surik prevailed over the guards and turned to join the fight against the Emperor himself. Meetra saw that the Emperor had all but defeated Revan without even drawing a weapon. She charged to his aid even as Revan was still reeling from being electrocuted by the Emperor's dark powers. Revan was saved from death by Surik, who knocked the Emperor's weapon aside with a toss of her own lightsaber, and Revan rose to his feet as Meetra Surik and Scourge rushed to his side. When the Emperor expressed his disappointment with Lord Scourge, Revan proclaimed that Scourge was the Jedi's ally. But Revan's ally was suddenly overcome by a vision of a future in which another knight defeated the Emperor. Understanding what he had to do, Scourge stepped behind Surik and slid his lightsaber between her shoulders, and a horrified Revan was quickly struck with a blast of force lightning by the Emperor. As Revan lay unconscious on the floor, the Emperor tested Scourge's loyalty by having him kill Revan, though the Emperor halted Scourge's blade before the deed was done. On the Emperor's orders, Revan was placed in a specially constructed prison in a space station at the heart of the remote Maelstrom Nebula. Locked in stasis, hovering between life and death, Revan was unable to move as the Emperor reached out across dozens of light years and fed off of the Jedi Master's strength, using Revan's power to fuel his own. The Emperor also linked his mind to Revan's and tried to draw on his knowledge of the Republic and the Force so that he could learn more about his enemies. Though her life was ended, Mitra Surek's existence continued in some ethereal form through the Force. With Revan captured by the Sith Emperor to be used as a source of life energy to draw upon, Surek's spirit remained near Revan's body to keep his spirit alive for the centuries he was to be held in captivity. Revan resisted the Emperor's influence with his strength of will, and the Force ghost of Surek remained next to him, lending her friend the strength to fight the Emperor, preventing the Sith from taking his knowledge. The Emperor also utilized Revan's prowess in both the light and the dark sides to use the Jedi as a conduit to the Force, through which the Emperor could see visions of the future, though Revan used their link in reverse to temper the Emperor's aggression and slow the Sith's plans to wage war on the Republic. However, Revan was mentally tortured for centuries by the Emperor, and the fear-wielding Sith Lords known as the Dread Masters, the Sith, sought to twist him to the dark side and remake him as the Emperor's servant, and though he was able to resist, Revan's mind eventually fractured under the strain. He was forced to separate himself from his pain, focusing solely on the Force, though part of his mind still experienced the torture. Despite all that, Revan managed to wage a mental war against the Emperor, delaying the Great Galactic War by 3 centuries. During his imprisonment, Revan's legend inspired the philosophy of a group known as the Order of Revan on Dromund Kaas. The Revanites believed in Revan's philosophy of balancing the light and the dark sides of the Force and in the power of rebirth. Revan had been a warrior as a Jedi and a teacher as a Sith, and he had been reborn when both turned on him. The Revanites were aware of Revan's battle with the Emperor, and the masters of the Revanite order believed that the Emperor had in fact been defeated and replaced by Revan. The Revanites constructed a shrine to Revan in a cave on Dromund Kaas, and initiate Revanites were often overcome by visions of the Sith Lord in the cave when they were undergoing the initiation rites. Despite Revan's influence, the Emperor's will could not be stopped, only slowed. Over the next 200 years, the Emperor advanced his plans for a new invasion. However, Revan's plot and near-successful assassination attempt unsettled the Emperor immensely, and as a result, the Empire's ruler delved into further studies of the dark side. In his studies, the Emperor discovered the rare technique of essence transfer to preserve his physical form from harm. Using the technique to transfer his life force between bodies, he created the position of the Emperor's voice, the host body of his consciousness, and the ultimate extension of his will. Throughout the next 3 centuries, the Emperor utilized many voices as the ravaging effects of the dark side took their toll upon the host bodies. Those hosts varied widely, including the bodies of a young human female and an elderly Sith pureblood, but they always possessed the same emotionless, cold male voice. Soon, the Emperor decided that he was tired of the galaxy as it existed, and one of the limits that the Sith teachings and his empire placed upon him. Resolving to free himself of such restraints, Wishied heard rumors of an ancient and unstoppable fleet of warships operated by sentient droids that had nearly wiped out all of wild space. A powerful ship known as the Gravestone stopped the entire Eternal Fleet at the backwater planet called Zakul. And so Wishied chose Zakul as the world upon which he would build a new empire, a truly eternal empire. Wishied took on a human male body as a new voice that went by the name Valkorion, though he split his mind and energy between the Valkorion body and numerous voices that oversaw the Sith Empire's march to war. Zakul's native humans were superstitious and nihilistic people who worshipped the ruthless old gods, and so Valkorion claimed to be the demon savior of Zakulan prophecy, an immortal god of gods who would topple Isaacs, the ultimate devourer, and the rest of the old gods, and thus usher in a new age. Dissatisfied with the Sith ideology, the Emperor divided his consciousness into a Zakulan warrior named Valkorion and created a West civilization known as the Eternal Empire. The building of the Eternal Throne started in the towering metropolis called the Spire, which comprised vertically stacked and numbered districts, each of which boasted a labyrinth of museums, restaurants, and entertainment designed for maximum enjoyment. The highest level, District 52, housed the droid command center Overwatch and the opulent Eternal Throne. The technology of the Spire gave the Immortal Emperor control over the Gemini units that operated the fleet. Gemini were sentient droids linked in a hive mind who operated the massive Eternal Fleet. Designed on planet Iokath by Iokath creators, the Gemini captains commanded the Eternal Fleet warships through the shared Gemini frequency, which allowed their consciousness to persist even when the droid bodies were destroyed. The Eternal Throne took generations to complete, finishing around 2 centuries after the Jedi Civil War. But Valkorion kept the Eternal Fleet within the unknown regions for the centuries that followed. Throughout all of this, Vitiate secretly maintained 2 voices, the human Valkorion body in the unknown regions and the various bodies that served as the voice in the Sith Empire. Despite Revan's influence, the Sith Empire invaded the Republic in 3681 BBY, beginning the Great Galactic War. And so the events of swtor, or Star Wars The Old Republic, begin. Darth Vindican, a male pureblood Sith Lord who served the Sith Empire, and his apprentice, the young human Malgus, once known as Varadon, joined an armada of Imperial battlecruisers to retake the planet Korriban from the Galactic Republic and the Jedi. Malgus was born under the name Varadon within Imperial space and raised by his adoptive father. While still young, Varadon killed a Twi'lek servant on his father's estate, revealing the dark will behind his sensitivity to the Force. The young boy was subsequently sent to the Sith Academy on the Imperial capital of Dromund Kaas, where he became a Sith warrior and a successful commander of the Imperial military. During a trip to the Outer Rim world of Geonosis, Varadon discovered the Twi'lek slave girl Elena Darrow and took her as his own. Although she was technically his slave, the two fell in love with one another and fought side by side in many battles during the Great Galactic War against the Galactic Republic. Varadon later changed his birth name and adopted the Sith moniker of Darth Malgus. During the first battle of the Great Galactic War, during the recapture of Korriban, Darth Vindican and Malgus landed in the hangar of the enemy ship, and preventing the station's crew from escaping aboard the freighter there, the two Sith disembarked to confront the two Jedi who were entering the hangar. While Vindican engaged the Zabrak Jedi Master Kao San Darach in battle, Malgus attacked Darach's Padawan, Satil Shan, a descendant of Revan and Bastila Shan's line. Inheriting her family's Force sensitivity, Satil Shan was introduced into the Jedi Order and became the Padawan of Jedi Master Ngni Zhou, though she later traveled to the Sith homeworld of Korriban to study under the Zabrak Battlemaster Kao San Darach. It was there that she witnessed the recapture of the planet by the Sith Empire. Malgus easily overpowered the young human at first, but a toss of Darach's lightsaber put Malgus on the defensive and allowed Shan to regain her footing. Malgus's master responded by unleashing a blast of lightning on Malgus's opponent, but Darach again came to his student rescue by blasting the warrior with the Force, causing Vindican to change targets and attack the freighter nearby that belonged to a smuggler named Nako Okar. Okar was busy trying to start the ship so that he and the Jedi could escape, while a Republic trooper named Jace Malcolm defended the freighter from the Sith attack by launching a rocket at him. Vindican easily deflected the rocket, but was enraged to see Darach order Shan to escape aboard the freighter. Angered that his opponent was escaping, Malgus engaged Darach alongside his master, while the Zabrak Battlemaster defended himself with both his and Shan's weapons. Despite the Sith's advantage of numbers, Darach easily beat back their attacks and scored a hit on Vindican's face before stabbing the Sith Master through the chest. Despite the fall of Malgus's master, the young Sith summoned his master's double-bladed lightsaber to his hand and charged Darach, knocking Shan's saber staff from Darach's grasp and battering down the Zabrak's defenses. Malgus brought the duel to a close when he cut down the Jedi Master. Malgus was surprised to find that his master was still alive and mocked Vindican for his failure to prevent the survivor's escape before decapitating the pureblood Sith as they watched the Sith Armada descend on Korriban. After the battle, Malgus walked alone on Korriban's surface and experienced a Force vision in which the galaxy and the Republic burned. From then on, Malgus believed that he would be responsible for the fall of the Republic and its Jedi Order. With the offensive going well, the Emperor became distracted by something else in the unknown regions. Around that time, a young knight named Senya Tiral joined Valkorian's elite guard, and the immortal Emperor had begun to phase out humans from the Eternal Empire's military in favor of droids such as the new Skytrooper battle droid. Senya Tiral spoke out against the change, catching Valkorian's attention. Her willingness to speak her mind earned her a permanent posting to Valkorian's elite guard, and the two began a secret affair 2 years later. Revan influenced Vitiate to fall in love. The couple was happy for a time, until Senya Tiral bore 2 twin sons, Arkan and Thaxan. As they grew, the 2 boys adored their father and were indifferent to their mother's affections, but Valkorian himself grew increasingly distant as the war against the Republic drew his attention. The Valkorian body barely acknowledged the presence of his family for weeks at a time as he concentrated his power and focus elsewhere. Following the Battle of Korriban, Malgus was promoted to the rank of Sith Lord, and around 3666 BBY he was granted the title of Darth. Taking on the full name Darth Malgus, he was selected to personally lead Imperial forces in a surprise attack on the peaceful planet of Alderaan in the Core Worlds. Timing his attack to coincide with the Imperial feint to draw the Republic fleet far from the core, Malgus landed thousands of assault droids and Imperial troopers accompanied by hundreds of Sith on Alderaan's surface after the Empire completed a vicious orbital bombardment. Malgus himself led the Imperials on a march across the planet, burning forests and destroying cities on a trek towards the capital city. Along with Malgus, there was Shae Vizsla, a female human Mandalorian warrior who spent her youth during the time of the Galactic Great War. In her younger years, she was earning a living as a ruthless bounty hunter, taking high-profile jobs in the pursuit of money, without a care for her employer's goals. Following the return of the Sith Empire from their millennia-long era of seclusion, and the start of the Great Galactic War between the resurgent Sith and the Galactic Republic, the Sith Imperials formed an alliance with the Mandalorian warrior clans, one that remained strong under the reign of the Mandalore the Vindicated. Vizsla's brutal assassination of Senator King caught the attention of the Sith Lord Darth Malgus, beginning her partnership with the Sith Empire. Her exceptional skill earned her a reputation that found Vizsla commonly employed by the Imperials for heavy-risk operations of a large and important nature. Shae Vizsla's skill and efficiency led her to join the Empire's biggest campaigns against the Republic. During the heat of the Great Galactic War, Shae Vizsla took part in the Sith Empire's attack on the peaceful core world of Alderaan. However, despite the Sith massive forces, members of the Havoc Squad, a unit from the Republic Special Forces, along with Satele Shan, whom Malgus dueled before during the retaking of Korriban, launched a guerrilla counterattack as the Sith Lords marched through the valley. Jace Malcolm, the same trooper whom Malgus had encountered 14 years earlier at Korriban, led his troops against the Imperials, prompting Malgus to defend himself against several Republic soldiers. Seeing the Sith Lord butchering his soldiers, Malcolm launched several rockets towards the Sith Lord. Malgus was able to protect himself against the explosions, though they scarred his face, and the Sith unleashed a blast of lightning to subdue Malcolm when the trooper rushed him. At Malgus's command, 3 Sith prepared to execute Malcolm, but the arrival of Satele Shan, now a Jedi Knight, saved the soldier from death. As she landed behind her friend, Shan unleashed a force blast that sent the 3 Sith flying and drew Malgus's attention. The 2 enemies began to duel, with Malgus driving Shan to her knees with his powerful blows, but Shan brought a nearby tree crashing to the ground between them in order to force the Sith Lord back. As their duel continued, Malgus was able to cut Shan's new saber staff in half, forcing her to block Malgus's lightsaber blade with her bare hands by absorbing the weapon's energy. Malgus was interrupted when Malcolm tackled the Sith Lord, wrestling with him before revealing that he was holding a grenade in his hand. The resulting explosion threw Malcolm backwards, while Malgus was able to withstand the blast despite scarring his face. Shan then closed this moment to blast Malgus with a force, throwing him into a nearby cliffside, and then unleashing a second, more powerful blast that brought down the entire cliff on top of him. The Sith forces were in retreat as reinforcements arrived from the Republic in the system to help the battered Republic defenders. Shan played a vital role in giving hope to the overwhelmed Republic forces on the ground. Malgus survived the encounter and was picked up by his personal shuttle. Frustrated and enraged by the defeat, he paid little attention to his wounds. His breathing sounded like a rasp over wood, his skin stung from burns, his lungs were damaged. Lacerations and contusions made a grim mosaic on his flesh. However, Malgus felt no pain. Following the battle on Alderaan, Malgus was nursed back to health by Darrow, but jaw wounds he received during the battle forced him to don a respirator mask. After defeating the Sith Lord Darth Malgus, Satele Shan and Trooper Malcolm began an affair that lasted for 6 months before Shan broke it off in fear of the darkness in the soldier's heart. However, she was pregnant with Malcolm's child, and Satele Shan eventually gave birth to her son, Theron, in secret with the help of the Jedi Master Jaw, before giving the child up to the Jedi Order and returning to the battlefield. Though the son of a Jedi Master, Theron did not wield the Force, but like his renowned mother, the spirit of rebellion is in his blood. In the future, he became a top covert agent for the Republic. By 3660 BBY, the Emperor of the Sith Empire was growing restless, and the breaking of the Imperial-sponsored Mandalorian blockade of the Hydean Way did nothing to help the chances of ending the war. Not long after the blockade, a resilient Republic struck at Ziost, although the Empire eventually defeated the attackers in a battle lasting more than a month. The Republic assault was foiled again at the subsequent Battle of Ashes Ree, but the Republic's success at the earlier Battle of Ord Radima angered the Emperor enough to demand that the Empire retake the world. Spurred on by their lord's command, Darth Malgus and Darth Angral led Imperial forces to a costly victory in the reconquest of Ord Radama. Revan's influence on the Emperor resulted in something that many Sith found surprising: plans for peace. Both the Emperor and the Dark Council were desperate for an end to the brutal war. Around the same time, Teral gave birth to a daughter she named Vaylin, but the child inherited her father's immense power. She made furniture move while still in the womb and tore apart droids as a toddler. Teral was horrified when her daughter crippled a guard after dropping a ball she had tossed, and went to Valkorion for help. Though distracted, Valkorion had been paying some attention to his children, and the similarities between himself and his favorite child both pleased and frightened the Sith entity. While his wife, Teral, came to him and begged him to help his daughter, Valkorion's solution was to install mental blocks that separated Vaylin from the most of her powers and suppressed her violent and sociopathic tendencies, but also damaged her personality. Fearing she would challenge him one day, Valkorion took Vaylin to Nathema, his birthplace of centuries ago, which remained lifeless and devoid of the Force ever since he used the ritual of Nathema to wipe out all life on the planet, granting himself immortality. Vaylin gave one last glance at her mother before being taken inside the sanatorium, the last standing and inhabited structure on the planet, where she was placed in custody of animoid scientist Jarak. Tasked to place Vaylin under strict mental conditioning, Jarak was allowed to use any and all methods that did not cause her death. Sensing her daughter's suffering, Senya decided to get Vaylin away from Nathema. Infiltrating the sanatorium, she found Vaylin unconscious and carried her to the shuttle landing platform. There, their path was blocked by 6 of the Nathema zealots, and after Vaylin opened her eyes, Senya ordered her to stay back while she knocked all 6 warriors out. Senya then asked Vaylin to come with her, but the look in her daughter's eyes was filled with hate. Valkorion himself then emerged from the sanatorium and ordered several knights to restrain Senya and take her away, while taking Valia with him into sanatorium. Deciding that her children were not safe around Valkorion, Senya attempted to run away with them, but the children idealized their father and refused to leave, calling their own mother weak, so she was forced to leave alone. A broken-hearted Senya Teral returned to service in the enforcement division of the Knights on the outer fringes of the Empire, never to speak with Valkorion again. In her absence, Valkorion remained emotionally distant from his children, teaching them his philosophy that one could achieve anything if they were willing to sacrifice, and changing their guards regularly to prevent them from becoming attached. Doing so reminded his children that while the Knights of Zakul served his children, the Knights considered the three of them to be merely extensions of Valkorion's will. However, he later came to regret his indifference towards Taral, considering his letting her leave to be a mistake. While some of the 7 surviving Dark Consulars wanted to continue the war, the Emperor's plans were put in motion around 3654 BBY, after he gave them consolation. Each of the 7 would receive their own star system for the Republic as part of the upcoming treaty. At the Emperor's request, the Sith Lord Darth Barris led a delegation to approach the Republic with an offer of peace in 3653 BBY, 28 years after the war's beginning. While delegations from the Empire, the Senate, and the Jedi Order prepared to meet on Alderaan to form a peace agreement, the Sith made preparations for their strike on Coruscant. The high-ranking Sith Lord Darth Angral was placed in charge of the entire operation, while Darth Malgus was chosen to lead an early attack on the Temple of the Jedi Order. Under the impression that the Empire would invade Coruscant and proceed to wipe it clean of life via orbital bombardment, Malgus eagerly accepted the responsibility, believing it to be the fruition of his vision on Dromund Kaas that foretold his destruction of the Republic. Malgus's attack plan involved him entering the temple, wherein he would distract the Jedi, while a force of 50 Sith warriors infiltrated the ancient edifice and destroyed the planetary defense grid mainframe within. Although Malgus requested that he be the preliminary attack's sole leader, Angral insisted that Lord Adras, who was a political ally of Angral's, act as a second-in-command by overseeing the 50-man infiltration team. Satele Shan was selected to be part of the delegation that was to attend peace talks with the Sith Empire on Alderaan. However, the Empire used the conference as its distraction while it attacked the Republic's capital of Coruscant, holding the world hostage to force the Republic to accept the terms of the Treaty of Coruscant. Shia Wizla was contracted by the Sith Empire to aid in their surprise assault on the galactic capital. Tasked with neutralizing Coruscant's defense grid, located within the Jedi Temple, Wizla found herself again working with Darth Malgus, in addition to his Twi'lek attendant, Elena Darrow. Once all three were in position at the temple, and upon receiving Malgus's order, Wizla infiltrated the ancient ziggurat via a high window over the temple's main entrance. Malgus, accompanied by his lover, Elena Darrow, arrived on Coruscant and proceeded on foot to the Jedi Temple, passing through crowded plazas filled with Coruscanti citizens, unaware of the impending attack. The two used the opportunity to discuss their views on both their life of battle and the Force, sharing a passionate kiss on the way. Before reaching the Jedi Temple, Malgus received a confirmation from the Mandalorian bounty hunter Shia Wizla that Coruscant's defensive grid had been disabled in preparation for the Sith assault. Darth Malgus and Elena Darrow entered the Jedi Temple. The chrono on Malgus's wrist began to beep, indicating the approach of the hijacked An-Air 2 Republic dropship towards the Jedi Temple. The beep panicked the Jedi Knights inside. They ignited their lightsabers, backed off a step, and assumed a fighting stance. However, the Jedi Master Wanzala, who stood right before Malgus, held his ground. Malgus credited him for it and inclined his head in show of respect. The dropship finally breached the Jedi Temple's main entrance, skidded along the temple floor, gouging stone, trailing fire, toppling columns, collapsing balconies, and crushing victims beneath it. However, Malgus and Zalo remained motionless until it came to a halt directly behind them. The craft's hatch blew open to reveal Lord Adras and the team of 50 Sith warriors who proceeded to ignite their lightsabers. At that moment, Malgus recalled his vision on Korriban, smiled, and activated his lightsaber. The reinforcements joined Malgus, Darrow, and the bounty hunter Wizla in attacking the Jedi and their security forces. Zalo and his knights leapt 20 meters backwards, where several other Jedi rallied behind them. At that moment, Adras and his Sith warriors charged towards the Jedi. The Sith overpowered the Jedi and the Jedi Temple was taken, but not before Wanzala wounded Malgus's lover, but not seriously. Malgus killed Van Zalo. Malgus saw to it that the temple served as Zalo's and the others' final resting place. In the aftermath of the battle for the Jedi Temple, as the Sith stood victorious of the Jedi, Shea Weasley lingered outside the ruined entrance to the temple, surveying the damage with her helmet off and held beneath her arm. When she was approached by Malgus, the two nodded to each other in turn. Recognized for her work, Weasley donned her helmet again and flew away from the burning temple to await her payment from the Empire for the services rendered. As Malgus learned of the peace treaty negotiations with the Galactic Republic, he secretly began to suspect that his superiors, including the Sith Emperor himself, have brought doom upon the Empire by bringing about peace. Malgus firmly believed that only through conflict can one achieve understanding of the Force. On Alderaan, where the Sith and the Jedi were trying to work out the peace treaty, the Jedi delegation sensed through the Force the horrors committed by the Sith on Coruscant. Despite this, or rather because of it, as the Sith are using the capture of Coruscant as leverage in the peace talks, the negotiations continue, much to the chagrin of the Jedi Knight Erin Lanier, who had sensed her master Zalo's deaths through the Force. Irene then secretly turns her back on the Jedi Order to go to Coruscant, find out who killed Zalo, and kill the murderer. To get to the recently captured Coruscant, however, she enlists the help of former Republic soldier, now Spice Runner, Zeerid Carr. Zeerid, meanwhile, also needs to get to Coruscant to deliver a shipment of Ankh spice for a criminal organization called the Exchange. Unfortunately for him, he is spied upon by former Imperial sniper Wrath Exar, who is working for the Hutts, rivals of the Exchange. Knowing that Zeerid is supposed to deliver the Ankh spice to Coruscant, Wrath arrives in Coruscant to notify Darth Malgus, now overseer of the Imperial blockade. Malgus heeded Wrath's information, and by the time Erin and Zeerid arrived, Zeerid's ship, the Fat Man, was attacked by the Sith fleet. It got to Coruscant but blown out of the sky. Erin and Zeerid survive thanks to Erin's use of the Force, and they land on Coruscant's surface. Though Zeerid failed to deliver his shipment of X-Spice, he still agrees to help Erin in her investigation as to who killed Zalo. They travel underground through the works and follow the late Zalo's astromech droid companion, T-701, to get to the underground recordings of the temple at the time of the attack. Erin learns that Malgus killed Zalo and vows to avenge her master. Zeerid, meanwhile, wishes to find a spacecraft that can get him back to his home planet of Wulta, so he can get to his daughter, Arrow Humes, before the Exchange reach her. Era and her aunt, Natala, could be in danger because of Zeerid's debts to the Exchange. Soon, as Erin returns to the destroyed Jedi Temple, she confronts Darth Malgus, who had been waiting for her since he learned that she was looking for him in vengeance for Master Zalo's death. Their fight is cut short before a clear winner can be determined, when Zeerid arrives to pick Erin up, as killing Malgus in vengeance will lead Erin down a dark path. Erin only agreed so that she could get a greater vengeance on Malgus by targeting his Twi'lek lover, Elena Darrow, so that he will know the pain that Erin suffered when Master Zalo died. Both Erin and Zeerid got to a spaceport where Erin found Elena, Malgus's lover, but found that killing her would disgrace everything that Master Zalo taught her. She again confronted Malgus, who arrived to confront the Jedi, just as Zeerid left with a ship of his own, which just so happened to be the ship owned by the sniper Wrath Exar. Zeerid and Wrath get to a fight in the ship's cargo hold, and Zeerid wins the fight by beating Wrath to a bloody pulp. After Zeerid takes over the ship, the Imperial blockade allows him to leave under Malgus's permission, after Erin threatened to kill Elena if he didn't let Zeerid go. Afterward, Zeerid killed Wrath by shoving him out of the ship's airlock, so that he could not tell the Exchange or anyone else about Era and Natala's relation to Zeerid. Malgus defeated Erin in their second fight, but instead of killing her, he allowed her to leave Coruscant after she spared Elena's life. Malgus then killed Elena himself with a single stab of the saber through her heart, after confessing his love to her, seeing her as a weakness that he could no longer afford. Using Coruscant as a bargaining chip, the Empire forced the Republic to sign the Treaty of Coruscant and end the Great Galactic War. The treaty forced the Republic to immediately withdraw all of its military forces from battlefields across the galaxy and redrew the galactic boundaries, effectively granting the Empire control of these parts of the galaxy that lay to the west and north of the core, as well as north of the Corellian Run, but they disbanded their occupation of Coruscant. However, after the treaty's completion, the Emperor retreated back into seclusion and left the Empire under the control of the Dark Council. The signing of the treaty began a period that soon came to be called the Cold War, where both the Empire and the Republic rebuilt their strength and engaged in various minor proxy engagements to test their enemies' readiness. The Emperor retained an iron grip on the hearts and minds of his people, despite his seemingly apathetic role in governing them, and the Dark Council continued their typical power plays and maneuvering as they ran the Empire. After the beginning of the Cold War, Wishiad's alter ego, Valkorion, allowed his daughter Vaylin to return to Zakul. One of his sons, Arkan, traveled to Nathema for the first and only time to take Vaylin home. Returning to the Spire, Vaylin entered the Eternal Throne where her father sat with her brothers at his side, and stated that he should have left her on Nathema. Valkorion replied that his daughter belonged at his side and presented Vaylin with her first lightsaber. Vaylin ignited the blade, which prompted Arkan and Thaxan to move to defend their father, who ordered them to stay back. To their relief, Vaylin deactivated her lightsaber and knelt down before Valkorion, acknowledging his superiority. Following the signing of the Treaty of Coruscant, which officially ended the war, Malgus distanced himself from the power games being played by the various Sith, vying for a seat on the Empire's governing Dark Council. Instead, Malgus led Sith forces into unknown regions, expanding the Empire's control into the largely unexplored territories. Though a fierce fighter, he stood out as an oddity among the Sith of his day. He often employed mercenaries of various alien species, thought by the Empire to be deceitful and disloyal. Malgus learned many languages as a result. Elena's death weighed heavily on Malgus, his thoughts haunted by her memory, which began to feed his anger. In her death, she became one of his greatest sources of strength. As the galaxy settled into an uneasy Cold War, Satil Shan foiled a conspiracy to sabotage the new peace perpetrated by the Dar Nala herself, and afterward embarked on an odyssey inspired by the call of the Force across the galaxy. The journey led her to the Jedi Order's long-lost homeworld of Tython in the deep core, and for her rediscovery of the planet, Shan was appointed to the position of Grand Master and given leadership of the entire Order. In her new role, Shan guided the Order through a number of crises that arose during the Cold War. Shea Vizsla continued the mercenary work, over decades becoming top tier in her profession, and her list of victories eventually surpassed that of Mandalore the Vindicated himself. Following years of success, Shai started taking fewer and fewer contracts as she became the leader of Clan Vizsla. By the time hostilities between the Republic and the Sith Empire erupted in a new galactic war, Vizsla and her clan had almost completely withdrawn from galactic events, settling on the remote planet of Rishi. In the future, around 3630 BBY, Shaya would fight against the Zakul, along with Como Fett, the ancient ancestor of Jango Fett. Year 3642 BBY. The tenuous peace brought by the Treaty of Coruscant began to collapse as a result of various proxy conflicts. However, the Empire did not truly commit itself to a renewed war until the Emperor's hold on Revan was broken. The Force Ghost of Mitra Surik enlisted the aid of the Jedi Master Otak and an elite strike team composed of Republic soldiers and Jedi to free the imprisoned Revan from the heart of the Maelstrom prison. A strike team attacked the prison in the Maelstrom, while Otak's fleet engaged the forces of the Imperial Grand Moff Rikus Kelran. After battling through the prison's personnel, the strike team deactivated Revan's prison, freeing the Jedi Master from stasis. Revan was initially horrified that the Republic cooperatives had released him, as it meant that he could no longer restrain the Emperor. But the ghost of Surik appeared to him and calmed her friend, informing Revan that he had to be freed before his strength failed. Saddened that Surik was not yet at peace, Revan explained that the Emperor sought to make him a servant of the Sith once more, and Surik told Revan that the peace had already been broken. The Emperor was waging war once again. Thanking Surik, Revan took one of the Imperial vessels and met with the Republic fleet as it departed the Maelstrom prison. After Revan was saved for the first time in centuries, the Emperor was freed from Revan's mental manipulations and no longer hindered by Revan's desire to protect the Republic. Without Revan's influence, the Emperor accelerated his plans for galactic annihilation and fueled the flames of war across the galaxy, and the Empire began to make war upon the Republic in force. Aboard Thalos, Master Otak's flagship, Revan thanked his rescuers and told them of his intent to end the threat of the Emperor and the Sith once and for all. Revan was then taken to the Order's homeworld of Tython, where he shared his knowledge of the Emperor with the Jedi Council. But Revan then left Tython to pursue his own plans. Revan searched the galaxy and located HK-47, who had been deactivated, but waited loyally for his master's return for the last 3 centuries. And Revan then located the Foundry, a Rakatan space station that he had discovered long ago, but the location of which he had kept from the Emperor. Revan also managed to retrieve his mask from the Revanites, who had stolen it from the Lord Graythan's collection. Seeing how he was worshipped by the Order of Revan, he decided that he wanted nothing to do with them, as he did not consider himself a prophet. But he did consider himself the only one who should destroy the Emperor, as the bond which formed between them is the strongest, and he knows him too well. Because of this, Revan considered only himself to be capable of taking the Emperor's life. Using the Foundry, Revan began to construct an army of extermination droids that he planned to unleash upon the Empire with the assignment of exterminating everyone with Sith pureblood ancestry. Revan placed HK-47 in command of his rapidly growing army, and the droid was more than happy to resume his assassination protocols. However, the Empire soon became aware of Revan's plans and captured the Republic cruiser Doran's Sky, using it to bypass the Republic blockade around the Foundry and insert an Imperial strike team onto the Foundry. Darth Malgus, commander of the Imperial Expeditionary Fleet, assembled a strike team and revealed to them the existence of an ancient space station known as the Foundry, a relic of an ancient civilization and of a powerful Jedi Master who commanded it. Darth Malgus revealed to his chosen strike team that the escape had in fact been intended so that the Jedi could lead the Empire to the Foundry and use it as a part of the coming war with the Republic. The Sith attacked the Foundry and engaged the Foundry's defense force of Jedi, Republic soldiers, and battle droids. As they made their way through the station, they discovered that it appeared to be a massive droid factory producing custom-built extermination droids for the Foundry's master, a Jedi who was actually the legendary Revan. As they made their way through the outer defenses, they were contacted by the Jedi Master, who hoped to convince them to give up their quest and surrender. Meanwhile, the Imperial Expeditionary Fleet engaged the Republic fleet over the Foundry. The Republic fleet quickly surrounded the Foundry, preventing the Imperial ships from retreating. The Imperial ships then began suffering heavy losses, but despite this, they continued fighting, needing to hold off the Republic forces as the strike team made their way through the Foundry. Within the droid factory's main generator, they confronted the leader of the droid armies, an assassination droid who identified himself as HK-47, the Master's most faithful ally. HK-47 revealed that the extermination droids had been equipped with bioscanners capable of detecting Sith genetic material and killing any who had Sith ancestry, which would account for 97.8% of the population of the Empire. Activating his assassination protocols and summoning extermination units to attack the strike team, HK-47 would eventually sustain serious damage and shut down. Crossing over the asteroid's shielded surface and entering the inner sanctum of the station, the strike team came face to face with their quarry. The Jedi Master revealed himself to be Revan, a Jedi Knight from 3 centuries earlier who was corrupted by the Sith Emperor and led a Sith invasion of the Republic after the Mandalorian Wars. Redeemed by the Jedi, Revan returned to the Empire and confronted the Emperor on Dromund Kaas, but was defeated due to betrayal from within by Lord Scourge and imprisoned for the next 300 years. After being freed from the Maelstrom prison, Revan returned to the Foundry to oversee what he believed would be the final downfall of the Sith and their empire. He pleaded with the strike team to see reason and abandon the Emperor, but they, including Darth Malgus, refused. Malgus also tried to convince Revan his error and his way, but Revan believed that he needed to destroy the Empire even at the cost of his entire population. Revan drew his lightsaber and the duel began. Revan proved a formidable opponent, skilled with his blade and with the powers of the Force, raining asteroids harvested by the Foundry and unleashing powerful bursts of Force lightning. But in the end, it was not enough to defeat the Empire's top agents, and Revan was defeated. Remarking that now he knew what his old friend Malak had thought when he defeated him 3 centuries earlier, Revan vanished in a burst of Force energy. At last, Imperial reinforcements arrived and mopped up the last of the Republic's ships. The space battle was over by the time Revan was defeated. The duel ended with Revan eliminated as a threat to the Empire. Dying, Revan attempted to become one with the Force, but he was only partially successful. While part of him moved on and joined the Force, the rest, the part that had embraced the darkness to escape the pain of the Emperor's torture, refused to do so, and was left in control of his body. Insane and fully submerged into the dark side, the new Dark Revan believed his mind to be cleaner, and his strength to have increased. Remembering the Revanites, he decided to make them his own, and become determined to destroy the Emperor once and for all. However, he first needed to clear the board of the Republic and the Empire, both of which he believed would interfere in his plans. Taking control of the Order of Revan, he effectively wiped out the original Revanites and remade them into a group of fanatical devotees who were willing to follow his lead unquestionably. His new Revanites included members throughout the upper echelons of both the Republic and the Empire, such as Colonel Ryan Dyrok of the Republic Special Forces Division and Darth Arkos of the Dark Council. Dyrok and Arkos were tasked with creating an infinite army using Rakatan technology. Having stolen Rakatan artifacts from the Jedi Temple and Sith Academy, the pair hired a Selkath scientist named Gorima to develop a way of fusing the Rakatan technology with living beings. On the planet Rakata Prime, also known as Lehon, the Revanites embedded fragments of the destroyed Starforge in the bodies of their recruits, creating soldiers who could heal rapidly and possessed great strength. However, the Infinite Army project was destroyed by a small alliance of Republic and Imperial individuals, who also killed Dyrok and Arkos. Commanding the Revanite fleet from the deck of a Harrower-class dreadnought, Revan arrived on the Lehon system only minutes after the pair's death. Disappointed with the loss of his infinite army, he spoke briefly with the opponents via a holographic projection before he bombarded the Temple of the Ancients with his fleet in an unsuccessful attempt to kill his enemies. Meanwhile, the Emperor learned that the former Dark Consular Exar, now the Padawan of Jedi Master Tol Braga, was on the planet Quesh. The Emperor dispatched his wrath, a Lord Scourge, to capture Exar. Scourge served the Emperor loyally for over 3 centuries, killing the Emperor's enemies and carrying out his will. Lord Scourge, however, failed at the mission given to him by the Emperor because he encountered the Hero of Tython and recognized the Jedi as the one he had seen in his visions 300 years ago. Known as the Hero of Tython, or the Outlander by the galaxy, Sashan Labal was hailed as one of the most powerful members of the Jedi Order. Knowing of the Emperor's interest in her, Scourge returned empty-handed to his master and delivered the news that the knight had joined a strike team that Tol Braga was assembling, a strike team with a purpose of capturing and redeeming the Emperor. The Emperor sent a detachment of the Imperial Guard under the command of Guardsman Laskiar to follow the Jedi in the planet Hoth, and Laskiar soon reported that the strike team intended to infiltrate the Emperor's space station. On Balmora, Sashan Labal and Jedi Master Warren Sederu had already recovered the prototype of the cloaking device shielding the fortress, and Laskiar's men failed in their attempts to capture the Hero of Tython and prevent the acquisition of the fortress's schematics on Hoth. When the strike team landed aboard the Emperor's fortress, they were forced to fight through the Imperial Guard, as well as Sith spawn known as the Harrowers, to reach the Emperor. And the first Jedi to enter the Emperor's throne room were Sashan Labal and Kira Carson. While the Emperor watched from his throne, Scourge battled the pair in a fierce duel, but the wrath was ultimately defeated by the 2 Jedi. At that moment, Braga, Sidoro, and the Jedi Knight Liha Narez arrived in the throne room, and Braga approached the Emperor's throne to request that he accompany the Jedi back to Tython. Leaping down from his throne, the Emperor mocked the Jedi Master for his pride and self-righteousness, surprising the strike team with his knowledge of their identities. The Emperor let loose a blazing storm of violet lightning that sent Narez and Sidaro crashing to the floor, while Braga, Carson, and the hero of Tython struggled to deflect it. It was not long before Braga and then Carson succumbed to the Emperor's attack as well, leaving only Sashan Labal to advance slowly against the storm. The Emperor then summoned a ball of force lightning in his hands and unleashed his full power against Sashan Labal, throwing the Jedi to the floor as the Emperor began to dominate the minds of his fallen enemies. Informing them that they were now his slaves and weapons, he unleashed another blast of lightning that sent them all into unconsciousness. True to his word, the Emperor bound the Jedi to his will and turned them to the dark side. His servants spent several months retraining them as Sith, transforming the fallen Jedi into the Emperor's loyal agents, and Sashan Labal was placed under the tutelage of Overseer Chaskar. However, she was finally freed from the Emperor's control by the spirit of Orgus Din, and the hero escaped back to Tython with the help of Scourge. The former Emperor's wrath revealed to the Jedi Council that the Emperor intended to complete the life-consuming ritual again on a galactic scale, but the ritual required a sacrifice of billions of simultaneous deaths to start. To that end, the Emperor sent the executor Kranis and his death cult to the recently discovered Republic prison world of Belsavis. Knowing that the fanatically loyal cult would gladly sacrifice their lives for him, the Emperor orchestrated an Imperial attack to serve as a distraction so that Kranis could detonate the planet's power core. The resulting explosion would ripple through hyperspace and consume all of the neighboring systems. The Emperor also awoke S. Gallant, a child who was on Belsavis, in order to prevent the Barcithor from acquiring an army in the form of the Ash-Ka species. But the Emperor's spies, the children, were destroyed. After learning of the Emperor's location on Dromund Kaas, Sashan Labal embarked on a mission to confront the Sith in the Dark Temple, while an invasion force under the command of Grandmaster Satil Shan attacked the Imperial capital. Well aware of his enemy's presence and intention, the Emperor waited in the depths of the Dark Temple as Sashan Labal and the astromech droid T-701 fought their way through the Imperial military and the Temple's defenses. As the droid was the only one of the Jedi's companions who would safely confront the Emperor without falling under the Sith's control, but the Huron T-701 were forced to rescue one of the other members of their crew when the companion was pinned down by Imperial forces. When his enemies arrived in the Dark Temple's throne room, the Emperor arose from his throne and unleashed a bolt of violet lightning after mocking Sashan Labal for sacrificing strength to rescue an ally. The hero of Tython intercepted the attack with a lightsaber, and the Emperor summoned 3 mind-formed duplicates of himself to attack Sashan Labal as he slowly descended the steps from his throne. The Jedi and T-701 made quick work of the phantoms by the time he reached the bottom, and the Emperor remained unfazed when his opponent's weapon was raised in a guard stance. The hero of Tython questioned the Sith's desire to consume the galaxy, but the Emperor warned the knight that his mind and abilities were beyond the Jedi's comprehension, and his goals were his to decide. But to the Emperor's surprise, the Jedi slowly but surely gained the upper hand in their battle, battering away at the Emperor's defenses. Finally, after the phantoms of Vitiate disappeared, the hero of Tython's true opponent fell to his knees before the steps. However, when Sashan Labal approached the seemingly injured Emperor, the Sith unleashed an explosive blast of force lightning that sent his opponent sliding back across the floor. The Emperor acknowledged his enemy's immersive power, but mocked the Jedi's limited adherence to the light side of the Force before unleashing a second, more powerful blast of lightning. Sashan caught the attack on the blade of a lightsaber, and the two opponents advanced across the room toward each other as the Emperor continued to blast the Jedi with lightning. As they reached each other, Sashan spun to the side and delivered a devastating strike to the Emperor's waist. The Sith fell to the floor, but he defiantly declared that he would never be redeemed or contained. Brushing off the hero's claims that he would face justice, the Emperor again attempted and failed to rise to his feet. Under the belief that the Emperor was dead, The Jedi contacted Lord Scourge to report success, and the former Emperor's wrath informed his ally that the Emperor was not yet defeated. The Emperor's essence left his swollen voice and warned the hero of Tython that he would take the Jedi with him if he had to die, releasing a massive amount of dark side energy from the body of the voice as the final defiant act. The energy rippled through the Dark Temple and began to collapse the structure, so the Jedi and the droid fled the structure and returned to their ship. Emperor's essence entered a deep slumber on Yavin 4 in order to recuperate, as the battle with the hero of Tython had grievously wounded his spirit. Yet the rest of the Empire believed that their leader had fallen. Hidden among the dark side energies of Yavin 4, the Emperor slowly recovered from the devastating injury that the hero of Tython had dealt him. Vitiate slowly recovered from the injuries his essence had sustained during the battle. The Imperial Guardsmen on the moon were tasked with preparing the device in the Temple of Sacrifice for use in restoring the Emperor, and the Emperor's spirit rested in a nearby temple. In his slumber, the Emperor's injured mind reached out to his children and whispered to them, issuing contradictory orders as his consciousness moved quickly from thought to thought. Despite the loss of the Infinite Army, Revan moved ahead with his efforts and recruited the Nova Blades pirate gang on the planet Rishi. Shia Wizla and her clan introduced the Revanites to Nova Blades and decided to help them. At Revan's instructions, the Nova Blades preyed on Republic and Imperial patrols, forcing them to shift their hyper routes with the intention of forcing a naval confrontation between the Republic and the Empire. The Revanites gathered a fleet of warships that they stationed on Rishi, where the battle would occur. The ships would enter the battle and wreak havoc along with Revanite saboteurs aboard the two opposing fleets. As their motives to manipulate the Republic Empire war to their own end came to light, Shia Wizla withdrew her clan from the partnership. Revan's alliance with Shia Wizla's Mandalorian clan did not last long, and when the Nova Blades came under attack by a mysterious pirate group, Revan ended his agreement with the pirates as they had served their purpose. That mysterious group was soon discovered to be the same individuals responsible for the Lehon, Rakata Prime, incident, including Revan's own descendant, Theron Shan, who was captured investigating a Revanite outpost. Theron Shan was brought to the Revanite stronghold on Sky Ridge Island, where Revan himself spent quite some time interrogating his descendant and attempting to convince Theron to join Revan's cause. Sometime after Revan departed, a rescue team infiltrated the stronghold, and Revan spoke to them briefly via holocom before the group escaped with Theron Shan. To Revan's displeasure, that same group of allied Imperial and Republic operatives successfully disabled the Revanites' jamming tower just as Revan's trap was sprung. The Republic and Imperial fleets were warned of the situation and alerted to the presence of the Revanite saboteurs before too much damage had been done. Following the presumed death of the Sith Emperor on Dromund Cass, Darth Erho invaded Ilum as retaliation, but his striving was thwarted by Darth Malgus, who helped the Republic to defeat him in order to see his rival cast aside, including aiding in the rescue of Supreme Commander Rance. After Erho was defeated by the Republic, Malgus took his seat on the Dark Council and took over Erho's position as head of Sphere of Military Offense. With the role, he also served as a military consultant, observing Imperial attempts to secure Atagan crystals to create an invincible stealth armada. Before and while he was on the Dark Council, Malgus advocated the need for alien alliances and reforms in the Empire, ideals that were rejected by staunch traditionalists like Grand Morph Ilion Ragus. Unbeknownst to others, Malgus used his position on the Dark Council to seize control of Darth Erho's resources, including using the crystals to create a stealth armada, allowing him to go ahead with his future plans. Once Malgus had the crystals, he delivered a powerful speech announcing the new empire and declared himself the new emperor, which would be free of the infighting of the Dark Council, powered through alien alliances and tolerance. In a message to the Empire he defected from, he explained that he used the Foundry's power to create a droid army, similar to Revan's, but much more powerful. Malgus's forces defending his mobile space station included rewired extermination droids, commanded by the rebuilt and reprogrammed HK-47. His new true empire would purify the galaxy through unrelenting warfare. Believing that many others shared his views about the state of the Empire, Malgus invited all the members of the current Empire to join his movement. In a short time, Malgus had established a loyal army of droids, mercenaries, soldiers, and Sith of a wide variety of species. With his fledgling rebellion, Malgus planned to win minor victories to test its strength, while waiting for an ideal time to strike at the galaxy and defeat both the Republic and the Empire. Darth Malgus captured many areas in the unknown regions. He gained the allegiance of Darth Revan, who became one of his closest allies. Malgus accumulated many more loyal Sith, mercenaries, and the droids loyal to those in his time. Many believed the Sith Empire was falling apart and in utter disrepair. Malgus sent his ally Darth Revan to Ilum in order to fulfill the invasion begun by Darth Ertho, but Revan was defeated and the strike team secured a stealth command ship from the invading fleet and flew it to the coordinates of Darth Malgus's hidden stealth space station. Cornered in his throne room, Malgus activated the station's self-destruct sequence to destroy the fleets assaulting it before dueling the strike team sent to face him. But for all that he was a brutal and skilled fighter, Malgus's resolve weakened as the battle went on. Taking advantage of this, his attackers were able to use pulse grenades, force powers, and other means to force him over the edge of the platform and down the Exar shaft to his supposed death. Despite the failure of his attempted coup, Darth Malgus managed to survive the explosion of the Emperor's fortress, faking his supposed death above Ilum. Malgus returned to the public in a supply drop on a shuttle to Ossus. Darth Malora, who commanded the Imperial forces during the invasion of Ossus, using her expertise as a scientist to genetically modify Geonosians and use them against the Jedi in battle, noticed the supply drop. She requested that it must not be opened because it could have been sent from a rival in order to undermine her operation. However, the supply drop opened by itself and Malgus revealed himself to Malora and others present. Being shocked of his survival, Malora then attempted to attack him but was pushed away by the Sith Lord, falling off the edge into the depths below. The Sith Lord Malgus then took command of the invasion from Malora and launched an attack on the Jedi colony, where Jedi Master Gnos Durell was located. Eventually, Malgus' survival became public for the rest of the Sith Empire and the Galactic Republic after the invasion of the planet. Darth Malgus then participated in many battles against the Republic and led forces of the Sith. After the many battles, Malgus' mental state was getting worse, and his medical droid had no idea how to remove such a psychological effect on him. Thinking for a while, Malgus remembered that he knew of one such technique and ordered the medical droid set course for Dantooine. Darth Malgus and the medical droid got to the planet and made their way to the Jedi Enclave ruins. Upon arriving at a junction, Malgus abandoned the droid and proceeded further into the ruins. Coming upon a sealed door, Malgus cut his way through with his lightsaber and acquired a relic belonging to Darth Nul, an ancient Sith Lord whose records vanished from history. Prior to leaving, Malgus left behind an echo to deploy his trap if anyone he forged strong bonds with came in search of him. At some point, Malgus traveled to the Temple of Nul on Ilum to retrieve a special holocron, but he soon found that both the Sith Empire and the Jedi Order had beaten him to it, as two Jedi and a Sith warrior were dueling for the holocron that was inside a machine within the temple. After the two Jedi gained the upper hand and wounded the Sith warrior, Malgus, to their surprise, suddenly appeared and stabbed their opponent from behind with his lightsaber, with the Sith condemning him as a traitor before succumbing to his wounds. With the warrior dispatched, Malgus quickly stood off against the Jedi Master Danlom Or, while his Padawan, Sahar Kanteen, went to retrieve the holocron and destroy the machine. To stop her, the Sith renegade unleashed a barrage of force lightning at the young Padawan, but she managed to dodge it and made it to the machine, leaving Malgus to briefly duel with Master Or, with the Jedi Master holding his own despite Malgus' superior strength and aggressive fighting style. As the two fought, however, Sahar inadvertently activated the machine and began experiencing visions of her past, as massive energy fields began to surround both her and the machine. Before the field could completely cover them, however, Or was able to retreat behind it, cutting Malgus off from both it and the holocron they sought. Despite this, Kanteen did not fulfill her master's orders of destroying the machine and its records, instead becoming entranced by it and the visions it was showing her. During this time, Malgus was able to sense the Padawan's past, where she was taken away from her home and her brother as a child by Or to train as a Jedi. Malgus told Sahar that this was how the Jedi and Sith maintained control of their respective orders, leaving behind many young that they did not deem worthy of using the Force to fend for themselves, and accusing the Jedi's actions of being an attempt at playing God. As Malgus's words began to affect her, or, to the Sith's fury, used the Force to destroy the machine and free his Padawan of its control, while also slamming and pinning Malgus to the walls of the temple with a piece of the device's stone debris. Though injured and trapped, the Sith Lord survived and watched as Sahar retrieved the holocron which remained intact. Unfortunately, as Sahar began to argue with her master over the revelations of her vision, Malgus revealed to her that the machine Or destroyed was meant to find individuals that the Jedi deemed unworthy of training, resulting in Or attempting to forcibly retrieve and destroy the holocron from her, leading to a brief struggle between them. As Sahar and Or fought for the holocron, Malgus assured her that if she gave it to him, they could still find her brother together. When Or attempted to reason with his Padawan, however, Malgus used the Force to entangle him in a series of loose cables from the destroyed device before freeing himself from the rubble. Once freed, the renegade Sith retrieved his lightsaber as he levitated the helpless Jedi to his position, forcing Sahar to watch in horror as he bisected her master before her eyes. As the Sahar regained her senses, Malgus grabbed the lightsaber of his recent victim and dueled for the holocron. The two engaged in a furious clash, with Sahar proving to a formidable opponent for Malgus as she attempted to avenge her fallen master, managing to hold her own against the renegade and disarming him of Or's lightsaber. Despite this, Malgus was soon able to gain the upper hand using the Force to push her back and collapse the ceiling of the temple, allowing him to snatch the holocron from her as she struggled to use the Force to shield herself from the large amounts of rubble falling upon her. As Malgus left the Padawan to her own fate, he claimed that she needed to break free of her cage if she was ready, urging her to forge her own destiny. Sometime in the future, Malgus got imprisoned on Carrick Station, formerly known as Outpost 22. It was a massive space station built in orbit of a planet in the core worlds of the Galactic Republic during the Cold War. It was named after the former Jedi Padawan Zane Carrick. Carrick Station was the main staging area for the Republic fleet and was the main hub of transport shuttles bearing Republic soldiers and Jedi to and from the Republic capital of Coruscant, the Jedi sanctum of Tython, or the war-torn world of Ord Mantell. While imprisoned, Malgus's plans were set in motion and proceeding as planned. The holocron he found in Null's temple was found by Zahar Kanteen. Malgus saw a vision of a galaxy in flames, and that what he had started would not end with him, as this was merely the beginning. Malgus's presence continued to haunt Zahar Kanteen in the form of visions. Meanwhile, Shia Weasla decided to step down as the Mandalore, the leader of all Mandalorians, and Heta Kal, with whom she had an internecine war, had to be found and eliminated. Shia Weasla hired a team of mercenaries to break into Carrick Station to free Malgus, believing he would know Heta's location. Arriving at Malgus's prison, Shia and her team made quick work of the guard droids before she made her way across to face the rogue Sith. She drew her blaster to destroy the chair and the shield, freeing one of the galaxy's most dangerous Sith Lords. Revan had discovered that the Emperor had been driven to the brink of defeat by a Jedi Knight, and that the Emperor's spirit had retreated to the moon Yavin 4 in order to recuperate. His involvement exposed to the galaxy, Revan advanced his plans and invaded Yavin 4 in force. His Revanites overwhelmed the small number of Imperial Guardsmen who were stationed at the Imperial Guard Academy on the moon, and secured the Temple of Sacrifice. The temple contained the mechanism required for a Sith ritual that would restore the Emperor's strength by consuming all life on Yavin 4. However, he was pursued by a coalition of Imperial and Republic forces that had joined together in the threat of a returned Emperor, and the coalition forces attacked the Revanites in order to prevent Revan from achieving his goal, as they believed he would be unable to defeat the Emperor. By that time, Revan had reacquired his longtime companion HK-47, who had been revealed after being destroyed in the service of the Sith Lord Darth Malgus. Unbeknownst to the Dark Revan, his other half was able to manifest as a Force spirit and warned the Coalition forces that their enemy was not the true Revan. In the battle that followed, the Coalition forces stormed the temple, and Revan was interrupted in his attempt to complete the ritual. With the temple machinery destroyed, Revan fled the temple and retreated to a temple deeper in the jungle, the Emperor's final sanctuary, and the site where his spirit was hidden. However, he was pursued by a number of the Coalition's greatest heroes, including his own descendants, Theron and his mother, Satil Shan, the Jedi Grandmaster. Determined to confront the Emperor in spite of his disruption of his plans, Revan engaged in battle with the Coalition forces, holding his own against a large number of enemies, but he was ultimately defeated, and he was horrified to hear the mocking laugh of the Emperor only moments later. His strength restored by feeding off the deaths and chaos caused by the Battle of the Moon, the Emperor declared his intention to retake the galaxy as his own, and his spirit then vanished from Yavin 4 without taking a body. Devastated at his failure, the Dark Revan was enraged to be visited by his spectral half. But the spirit convinced his other half to release his hold on their physical form and merge once more, making Revan whole. His mind restored, Revan warned the Coalition to remain vigilant in the wake of the Emperor's return, and Revan's physical body vanished as he merged with the Force, leaving only his scarred mask and his lightsaber. The Emperor was able to consolidate his entire essence into the Volkorian body, abandoning the name Vitiate and severing his ties to the Sith Empire, even going so far as declaring it a failed experiment. Not long after, Volkorian was approached by his sons, who proposed a plan to test the strength of the border worlds between the Eternal Empire and the Eastern Galaxy. Now fully devoted to ruling the Eternal Empire, Volkorian sanctioned the attacks, but only permitted Thaxan to lead the Eternal Fleet. Arkan disobeyed the command and accompanied his brother anyway, striking at worlds such as Tython and Korriban. During the attack on Korriban, Arkan was seriously injured in battle, losing an arm and suffering severe wounds to his face. When Thaxan reported on the battle to his father, Volkorian was uninterested in his son's wounds, believing it to be a fair price for his defiance. When the two returned from the raids, they presented trophies of lightsabers and banners to their father at the foot of the Eternal Throne. Volkorian responded with silence and turned away, infuriating an already resentful Arkan. Volkorian's son was overcome with anger and leapt at his father, intending to kill him with his lightsaber. Thaxan reached out with the Force and pulled his brother back in mid-leap, and Arkan, still caught up in his anger and the dark side, engaged in a furious but brief lightsaber duel with Thaxan that ended with Arkan slaying his own twin. As his horrified son came to his senses, a seemingly unmoved Volkorian approached him and commanded Arkan to come with him. In the aftermath of the Eternal Empire's attacks on Republic, Darth Mar, along with Sashan Labelle, led a joint Republic Imperial expedition into unknown regions in pursuit of both the Sith Emperor and the mysterious attackers. The Republic Imperial scouting party was taken captive and brought before the Emperor. He killed Darth Mar, but the second prisoner, Sashan Labelle, remained alive. Arkan, Volkorian's son, killed him while he was distracted, but the Emperor was able to transfer his essence into the mind of Sashan Labelle. Arkan then claimed the throne of the Eternal Empire and took control of the Eternal Fleet. He launched a campaign that overran both the Republic and the Sith Empire. Arkan publicly blamed Sashan Labelle, the hero of Tython, of his father's death. Though he was locked within the Sashan Labelle's mind, Volkorian did not possess his host's body. He instead manipulated her dreams within their shared carbonite prison, attempting to convince the hero of Tython that he sought only to aid his host in taking the galaxy for their own and continuing to offer to share his power. Sashan Labelle was imprisoned for 5 years until she was rescued by her allies, and Volkorian watched as hero of Tython's group escaped the Spire and discovered the Gravestone, the ship that could battle the Eternal Fleet in the endless swamp on Zakul planet. The Volkorian helped and guided Sashan. The hero of Tython's company settled on the planet Odyssean. The Emperor Arkan of the Eternal Empire had learned the location of the Alliance base on the planet Odyssean and attacked. Sashan Labelle fought Arkan on his ship's breach, while his sister, Waylon, after spotting her mother on the security cameras, contacted the group and revealed that Emperor Arkan was on the flagship's bridge, which prompted Senya to separate from the rest and confront her daughter personally. As the hero of Tython fought against Archon, Vaylin fought against her mother. Sashan Labal beat Archon and his mother saved him. They fled together. The only survivor from Zakuulan forces was Vaylin, who returned to Zakuul only to find the Eternal Throne empty, thus taking it for herself. Vaylin unleashed a full-scale assault on Addison. She confronted the hero of Tython with her full powers, cracking the walls of the Alliance base. Despite this, Sashan Labal vanquished Vaylin, but, as Valkorion soon revealed, her death left the Eternal Throne without a master, causing the Eternal Fleet to revert to its original purpose of extermination. To stop the rampage, Sashan Labal had to seize the Eternal Throne. Accompanied by 2 others, the hero of Tython fought through the lines of knights, skytroopers, and others barring the way up into the spire before entering the throne chamber. She sat upon the throne, becoming immobilized in agony as the power of the throne pulsed through her body. When it was done, the fleet had stopped firing at last. Valkorion appeared before Sashan Labal, congratulating her for finally becoming ruler of Zakuul and master of the Eternal Throne, before lashing out with his power, trying to force her to submit to his will. He revealed that he intended to hollow out her as a new vessel for his immortal spirit, just as he had done to the original Valkorion centuries before, and take the throne back to himself. Though Sashan Labal tried to resist, Valkorion shattered the mind of his unwilling host, forcing her very being into the depths of her own psyche. The hero of Tython soon regained control, however, and faced off against Valkorion. She, now in full control of her own mind again, spoke the words, "Kneel before the dragon of Zakuul," the trigger words for Vaylin's true power conditioning and sealing, the ones the Emperor used to make her not overthrow him. To Valkorion's utter shock, thinking that only Vaylin was vulnerable, he became powerless before his enemy. Valkorion turned towards the throne, only to be confronted by Senya, his wife, who declared that Valkorion had turned his back on his family for the last time, and struck him with her lightsaber, raving that a god has no family, and that without him they were nothing. Valkorion rose to strike at the hero of Tython, only to be immobilized by Senya. Valkorion tried to lash out one last time, but was struck down on the spot by Sashan. With a great burst of dark side energy, the immortal Emperor was gone, seemingly never to return. Because of his obsession with immortality and the subsequent use of the Emperor's voice, Vitiate kept his original body locked in stasis where it was unable to be harmed by neither nature nor outside interference, and its location kept secret among only his most trusted servants, including the Force and a former Emperor's Wrath, Lord Scourge. The Emperor infused his body with a portion of his essence, which would immobilize the attacker by putting them into a coma. The plague would spawn an entity that would feed on the victims by connecting their minds and merging into an even stronger entity. However, despite the effectiveness of the plague, anybody who was previously granted a portion of Vitiate's power was rendered immune to the plague's effects due to the past power acting as a vaccine. The Sith Lord Scourge and Jedi Kira Carson discovered the location of Vitiate's original body, and they destroyed it at practically the same time Sashan Labal destroyed Valkorion's spirit in their mind during the battle for Zakuul. This event led to the plague being released and rendering Scourge and Kira comatose for more than a year. Satele Shan and her followers learned of this and rescued the duo. However, they unknowingly doomed themselves in the process without having any sort of vaccine similar to what Scourge and Kira possessed. Scourge and Kira trapped the now plagued Satele Shan and her followers in a transport program to travel a random course throughout unsettled sectors of the Outer Rim, with a few mad droids to tend to them. Scourge and Kira sought the aid of Sashan Labal. Scourge and Kira revealed their plan to the hero of Tython. They would send a signal to the transport in order to bring it to the enemy sector closer to Addison. Upon its arrival, they would board the transport, connect their minds through the Force, and attempt to destroy the entity. If this did not work, their last resort would be destroying the transport. Sashan Labal agreed to this proposal, and Kira stated that it would be a while before the transport came into range. Much to Scourge's increasing frustration, however, the ship disappeared, not appearing at its next expected rendezvous point. To hunt it down, they suggested Sashan Labal send droids, as they would not become corrupted by Vitiate's power. The son of Volkorian, Archon, and his mother, Senya, joined the Hero of Tython after Lord Scourge and Kira Carson contacted them and revealed to them the existence of Volkorian's final weapon in form of a plague unleashed on Jedi Master Satele Shen and her followers. The droid T-701, piloting a starfighter, located on the ship and transmitted the coordinates to Adesan. This also uncovered the continued existence of the Emperor's Hand, Vitiate's innermost circle of fanatics. As they had been vessels of the Emperor's power and thus could resist his corruption, the Hero of Tython, Scourge, and Kira intended to travel alone to the ship, but were joined by others from Adesan, Archon and Senya included, who provided the support when the Emperor's Hand attacked them in a shuttle. Sashan Labelle and her allies boarded. Kira shut down the ship's engines and defenses, while Scourge joined the Sashan to launch the escape pods and jettison the Emperor's servants' shuttles in order to prevent the curse from getting off the ship. Sashan and Scourge were approached by the spirit of Revan, who had been guiding Scourge to stop the Emperor's rebirth. Though thought to have become one with the Force on Yavin years before, Revan explained he could not rest until he knew Vitiate's spirit was banished forever, and warned that Vitiate was using his possessed victims to remake himself. With the ship disabled, Kira rejoined Sashan and Scourge in the medical bay, where they confronted the leaders of the Emperor's fanatics. After defeating them, Kira found that while Satele lived still, 2 of the possessed Jedi were dead, and the others were close to death. As planned, Kira connected to the others via the Force to enter Satele's mind, where they encountered all 3 of the Emperor's known guises. First Volkorian, then Vitiate, and finally his original form, Tenebrae. Kira realized that the ritual carved into Tenebrae's original body was not a plague, but an imprint, an echo of his original self. Tenebrae condemned the version of him they knew as too complacent, distracted by moral concerns, empires, wars, and even, in Volkorian's case, a family, and declared he would succeed where his original self had failed. The Vitiate form separated Sashan from her allies. However, they were soon joined by Revan, who stood with the Hero of Tython against Tenebrae's shades. While the 3 forms all declared themselves endless, they were confronted first by Mitra Surik, whom Tenebrae mocked for her failure to kill him once before, and then by Scourge, who reminded him that he had saved the Emperor from her the first time and would not do so again. And Archon and Senya were supported by the spirits of their loved relatives, Thaxan and Waylon. The Tenebrae form again lashed out to separate the Sashan from the others. The Jedi then encountered Darth Mar, the Dark Counselor who had been killed at her side on Zakul by Volkorian years prior. Mar explained that the new Tenebrae only knew of his past deeds from the memories and impressions of Satele and her students, but had gained none of the wisdom from those experiences. Mar warned that if he was not stopped now, there would not be another opportunity, and called upon the Hero of Tython to break the chains he uses to ensnare us all. Sashan reached the center of the mindscape, a recreation of the Jedi Temple on Tython, and encountered Satele within. The Emperor's 3 forms boasted that Satele could not resist for long, and that when her mind was destroyed, only Tenebrae would remain. Satele awoke and mocked Tenebrae for his ego. He could have dominated any one of her students, but instead chose to dominate them all, as well as their master, all to prove he was still powerful. As Satele spoke, those whom the Emperor had manipulated and killed over the centuries, all who knew his true weakness, his pride and vanity, and his fear of death, began to manifest, standing behind Sashan Labelle, the one who had the power to destroy him once and for all. In the end, Tenebrae's power was not enough to save him, as the Hero of Tython and her allies withstood the power of the Emperor's many forms. Defeated, the other 2 guises of the Emperor were petrified, and the Tenebrae form reached out defiantly one final time before he too turned to stone and crumbled to dust, just as his victims had done in the past. Once and for all time, the Emperor was no more, and both Revan and Surik became one with the Force. Revan's legacy, however, would live on. The Sith Lord Darth Revan, who lived during the 1,000-year conflict known as the New Sith Wars, chose his Sith name after reading a damaged manuscript about Revan. And the Sith Lord Darth Bane discovered Revan's Sith holocron on the planet Lehon, Rakata Prime, and used Revan's teachings to develop the Rule of Two philosophy. Thank you all for watching. This video was created by Nikita Naumov, also known as Dominato Space on YouTube, and the material surrounding the story of the Old Republic era of the Star Wars universe was also compiled by him. The story continues in the Darth Bane novels, written by Drew Karpyshyn. Be sure to check them out. This completes this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and may the Force be with you.